an AFM over a district FO.
Okay, so for the folks online, sorry, we're just getting set up in here and want to test our audio and video. So between Alicia and Melanie, can you come on and let me know if you've got good audio video of us?
Yep,
Yes.
I think it's good.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Thank you. All right, be patient with us online as we get going this morning and as we get in our groove. For the folks that are in here, obviously I've got the camera on and I got the microphone on, so just be aware of that. And we'll go ahead and get it kicked off. And if you guys need to set up, feel free. This is super informal. I'm here for your guys' benefit, so I'm going to work around your schedules, do whatever we need to do to make the day work and get through a day of WFDSS training. So thank you for coming. To start with, I think I know everybody in here, but my name's Dylan Rader, fire planner for Nevada BLM, recently transitioned over to the Wildland Fire Service, currently fire planner under the Great Basin Geographic Area TO, and hoping to kind of find out what my lane is here in the next few weeks. And hopefully it's going to be continuing to provide fire planning oversight for Nevada BLM, because that's what I've been doing. And I think that's what my strength is anyway. So, well, I would like to do introductions with each of you guys. If you just introduce who you are, what your title is, and if you would just throw in maybe one thing you want to learn about WFDSS today that I can kind of work into the agenda if I'm not going to already. So, Bobby, would you mind starting?
My name is Bobby. I'm with the Humboldt-Towabbia National Forest. I'm the acting FMO for the Ely, Austin, and Tonopah districts. I'm not sure what it is that I want to learn about with this. I just know that every time Dylan teaches a class that I always learn a ton, so that's why I showed up.
Man, hard to thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Sheena.
Test, you know that.
Sheena Gilbert, fire planner here, and I haven't played with it since they added multiple approvers, so it'll be good to see that.
My name is Jake Keough. I am a wildland firefighter in the fuels program here for the Wildland Fire Service. After the WFDSS training last year, I think we did one of these. I assisted with one of these, and that was it. So just a brief refresher.
Excellent.
My name is Kelly, and I'm the district forester / wildland firefighter. And I'm here to learn about what it is that you guys do.
Seth Trodall, wildland firefighter, Boz at Ely. And I'm here just reporting.
Cameron Boyce at AFM Cali Inc. and have looked as a consultant and just starting off again. Hi, Peterson, DUI Great Basin Unit 9 Fire Chief.
GB9.
G9, baby.
Okay.
And so there's some specifics I'd like to learn on what this. So we went through the new version on the Mount Irish fire last year, and thank you for your help on the call and teams. We never ever could get all of WFDSS to print, specifically the cost estimate. We never print. So it was in the document.
Gotcha.
And then also there was something, it was me. Like as you go from one tab to another, you needed to like close it or something.
Mm-hmm.
Before you didn't have to close them, you could just go to a tab.
Yeah.
Just that overall of the process.
Yeah. Yep. Understood.
John Holmes, Great Basin District 9 Deputy Fire Chief, I guess. No, it's good to refresh this stuff. Done a lot of work this season. Seems like everyone's a little different, new process, new program. Take a look at it before you have to do it.
That's what we'll do today. We got a couple folks online. So Melanie, want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, you bet. Good morning, everyone. Melanie Peterson. I'm the Bristlecone Field Manager. I guess a couple of things is just kind of what my role will be as things have progressed, and just to get an overall update refresher.
And Alicia?
Good morning, Alicia Stiles, Basin and Range National Monument Manager down in Caliente. As Ty said, we got to trial by fire the new WFDSS last year with the Mount Irish fire. So just attending to see if there's anything new. I'll be dropping on and off a couple times today. My oldest son is graduating high school tomorrow, so I got some family coming in town. So thanks.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'm displaying the agenda up on the screen there. Obviously, for you folks that are in here, I see some of you have your computers, some of you don't. The training is formatted to have you guys working along with your computer as we go through this. So at any point, if you want to go grab a computer, the other way I've formatted it is you guys feel free to go back to your cubicles. If you need to go back to your cubicles, you can sign in on Teams and follow along with us on Teams as well. So if you got another meeting or something like that, I'm flexible. But just know that if you need to pop in and out of the room, whatever you need to do, you're not going to interrupt what I'm doing. I'm going to teach and we're going to go through and do what we're going to do. But just make sure you guys are taken care of and got what you need. So as far as the agenda, here's kind of what I'm hoping for. We'll spend basically about an hour per part. We'll go through the first part, talking about FAMLA, talking about WFDSS profiles, and I've got a PowerPoint presentation. And then we'll get into the simulation. The simulation, it's the same incident that we set up last year. So the reason I call it a simulation is because we are going to run it as a little bit more of a simulation this year. Once we get into parts 2 and 3, I'm basically going to pass it off, whether it's Sheena or whoever can be the lead. I'm going to ask one of you to kind of be the lead and just attack this WFDSS decision, just like we're sitting down and it's a fire and we're needing to get this WFDSS decision done in an afternoon type thing, right? I don't, and that's your guys' opportunity to talk through your process. Every district has, different processes that they go through, and a lot of it's, scenario based as well. If you have a single fire and you're doing one WFDSS decision, pretty easy process. If you got 5 fires, it becomes a little more challenging. If you got 30 fires, it becomes a lot more challenging, right? So and I know here in Ely District, you guys have the potential for each of those scenarios. So keep that in mind as you're working through this, and we can have those discussions as well. We're going to spend a lot of time in WFDSS itself. We're not going to talk, when we get into WFDSS, I'm going to talk about editing and the process of editing and considerations that you need to make specifically for multiple groups, and when you have multiple people in the decision working on it at the same time. So keep that in mind. But at the end of the first part, which I'm hoping to shoot it for about lunch, around 11:30 or so, we should be able to have our decision at a place where we're ready to approve it. So the reason I bring that up is for any of the AADM types, if you have to step out, if you want to come back in here around that 11:30 time frame, we can actually work through the actual approval. We can get you added into the decision, and we can show you the process of what it means to have multiple approvers in the decision too, because it's a new concept in that we have multiple approvers. We used to have one single line officer authority. Now we have two approving officials on our WFDSS decisions, and that's just for the Wildland Fire Service and the Bureau, right? I mean, if Forest Service is involved, there's another approver. Any of the other jurisdictional bureau reps or agency administrators, whatever they're calling themselves, those would all be additional approvers at that point as well. And WFDSS is set up now. Last year, WFDSS was new. We were going into WFDSS Next Generation. It had a bug in it where you can only have one approver. That's since been fixed, so you can have those multiple approvers in there now. So it's set up to facilitate that process. Once we'll go through lunch again, hopefully about 12 to 1300. We'll come back for the afternoon, and the afternoon's pretty quick wrap up. I've got 2 hours on the agenda, probably going to be more like an hour. We'll spend most of the time going through spatial fire planning service data. This is Sheena's opportunity to kind of present what we have in spatial fire planning to, to the chiefs and to the agency administrators, to the bureau reps, and decide, are there edits we need to make? Are we good going forward? Or is there any not last second, or are there any edits we need to make prior to fire season? And then that ISAP and WFDSS Next Gen integration, I'm going to talk off and on to that throughout the day, but that's going to be a real quick discussion as well. So I hope to wrap up around that 1430 time frame, and then I'm driving back to Elko. So that's kind of an idea of what the agenda will look like today. Again, I'm flexible. If anybody has any needs, feel free, step out, go do your calls, go do your meetings, go do whatever you need to do. Hopefully everybody's had the chance to do this. If you haven't had the chance to request your accounts, I would please do that now while I'm talking, because once I get into the training, I'll have an opportunity to get in there and actually approve your accounts here in about half an hour. And then you'll be able to log in and actually work through the scenario with everybody else. But if you don't have your EDU or your production access in the agenda, this is how you can request it. Forest Service, you probably have different approvers. If you want to put me, I can approve you. If anybody in here is Forest Service and needs to be, there isn't a clear line of stick to your agencies for this FAMOTH approval, but we can get anybody approved now that needs to get approved. So just keep that in mind. The other portion of the agenda, the other page on the agenda is if you have to leave early and you can't sit through the training, it's important to go in, and for the approvers especially, you have to go into your profile in WFDSS and you have to check the approver box. When you check the approver box, you certify that you meet your agency training requirements, yada, yada, yada. WFDSS makes you a certifier. There's no cross-reference to IQCS. There's no cross-reference to IROC. WFDSS doesn't talk to those systems to determine whether or not you're actually qualified. The only thing WFDSS knows is that you check that box. So if you need to be an approver, you need to make sure that you go into WFDSS Prod and WFDSS EDU and edit your profiles in both of those. And while you're at it, it's also a good opportunity to make sure that your cell phone number and all of your agency information is current and up to date. People move around a lot. A lot of people build profiles under one job, and then 5 years later, their WFDSS profile still shows them under that job. A lot of times it's just your FAMOTH profile. Go in, update your FAMOTH profile. If it's your WFDSS profile, you can update it directly in WFDSS, and I'll show you how. The other improvement, I guess, that I've made from last year is if you click on this, it'll bring up a link tree. That link tree is different than the Nevada Fire Maps link tree. This link tree is set up just for what I've done under fire planning. So I have a lot of the maps that we're going to talk about, but specifically what I want you guys to focus on today are the WFDSS links. So anything that you need to do in WFDSS, whether it's in WFDSS, FAMOTH, making a fire modeling request, that we'll go over that today as well. All of those links are right here in this section. For the training that we're doing, The agenda and the WFDS guide, those are the two primary references that I'm going to be making throughout the training. Those are these top two links right here. You can click on those now and open them if you want to follow along. And then the rest of the material that I have posted for the training is all in these links right in here. Again, I'm recording this, and each district has recordings that once I get back to Elko next week, I'll process it. I'll post it to YouTube, so it's accessible by anybody. Those will be available if somebody misses the training. It is a viable option to actually have an agency administrator who's never been in WFDSS. I've had people tell me they've worked themselves through the training and in EDU and have been able to be successful in WFDSS. So that's the reason why I do it. I post them because people find utility in being able to work through it at their own pace afterwards. And then there's other links on here too. I'm not going to get into fire danger stuff. We covered that in February. But all of these links are on this link tree, which are on the agenda as well. So instead of including all the links in the PowerPoint presentation, I felt it was important that we include it there. So are there any questions on any of that or the kind of the format? Hopefully there's a sign-in sheet going around. Please sign into that sheet. I'm not doing anything in IQCS. If somebody wants that sheet as documentation, like I know in the Forest Service, you guys have a training requirement, a WFDSS refresher training requirement. We on the BLM don't have that. So I just keep the roster. If anybody wants a copy of that roster for training purposes, just send me an email and I'll make sure you get a copy of that. But other than that, I don't enter anything into IQCS or anything more than that. Okay. So we'll get into the presentation and then we'll actually get into WFDSS, and I'm not going to go over this. This is on the agenda. There are a couple of links that I do want to highlight though in that link tree. There's a training roster form. So for the folks that are online, if you guys can click on this WFDSS training roster form, which is the same thing on the link tree, WFDSS training survey completed at the start of training. Sorry, it's this one here. That'll get your information into the roster for the folks that are virtual and can't sign into the piece of paper. The other link that's on the link tree, and this is for everybody in the room too, if at the end of the day or at some point in the next week, if you guys could complete this survey and give me some feedback, I would appreciate it. I use that to show my supervisor that I try to do a good job in these trainings. And I also use it to help me build next year's training. There's some survey questions in there as far as topics that you'd like to see in future trainings. If you select a couple of those topics, I'll try to include them in next year's training as well. Let me take a quick break here. All right, so show of hands, how many people have used WFDSS? Almost everybody in the room. Good. I'm going to use a lot of acronyms, and what I try to do with this section is I try to go back and explain the history of WFDSS. WFDSS basically came about 2009 is when we really started using WFDSS. Prior to 2009, there's a program called WFSA, the Wildland Fire Situation Assessment, which was a stand.
Don't forget WFIP.
And WFIP, yeah, there are WFIPs that if you did manage natural fire, you had to do a wildland fire implementation plan. Yep, exactly. These were all standalone programs that were on a desktop that you had to bring in files every year and update text files and that kind of stuff, and it was pretty clunky, to be honest with you. But it was important because that WFSA was the first step in developing WFDSS. And what WFDSS is it's basically meeting each of these needs in fire. And at the time, this is a PowerPoint presentation back from 2015, 10 years old now, and you'll see that a lot of these issues are still prevalent in our world today. Effective management predicated upon decision-making. Obviously, in 2009, we went through a big change in federal fire policy. That is when we could have managed fire for multiple objectives, right? Prior to that, we had one objective, and once you had that objective, you managed with that objective until the fire was out. In 2009, we opened up multiple objective fires, and then management became a much broader aspect in terms of fire management decisions. Management of large fire costs becoming increasingly important. Small percentage of total wildland fires account for the largest amount of expenditures, still the case today. And the bottom bullet's the one I really like to hit on. Initial strategic response decisions are most important in terms of resource commitments and expenditures. What that means to me is within that first 5-day window, that's the most important period in that fire, because that really decides what that fire, the potential is, what our resource commitment is going to be, and overall what our economic investment is going to be to put that fire out. So all of these decisions are documented in your WFDSS decision. And this is kind of a reference back to the 2009 policy. I'm not going to read this slide. There's obviously a lot of words on here, but the one thing I do want to point out is over here on this slide. This was a key bullet, a key takeaway out of that 2009 policy is that there will be a decision support process to guide and document fire decisions. It provides situational assessment, analyzes hazards and risks, defines implementation actions, and document those decisions and rationale for those decisions. So again, the principles of WFDSS were formed back in, prior to this policy. But the reasons is because managers need to have information when they need to make the decision. And that's what WFDSS does. WFDSS consolidates a ton of information and brings it into one platform that we can synthesize that information and actually use it in decision support. We obviously know decision support does not replace decision making, but decision support enhances that decision making by providing decision makers the information they need to make quick, relevant, timely decisions. And decision support information comes from a variety of sources that can range from experience to quantitative analysis procedures. And that's what we're getting into now. We've kind of transitioned over the last 10 years. We've been fully engaged in spatial fire planning. Now we're kind of graduating into that quantified risk assessment realm of spatial fire planning, which is the next evolution of that risk assessment. And then decision support information has applications across a wide range and scales. So WFDSS is a system that all of that risk and decision sharing can be displayed, can be discussed, can be synthesized, can be documented. It's analysis utilizing fire behavior modeling, utilizes economic principles and information technology. And this is the information that is required for completion of an operational plan. I don't think when we did introductions, part of my background is I'm also a complex plans chief. So my job as a complex plans chief is to come into a unit that's ordered us, go into the WFDSS decision, dig out what are going to be the initial incident objectives for that first IAP. And if you at the local unit have done a good job with your WFDSS decision, it makes it real easy for me as a plans chief to go in, copy that stuff out, put it right into our IAP and show that clear delineation of leaders' intent down into the, basically the 204s at that point, right? Because we're coming up with division assignments. So if there's any questions about how leaders' intent gets relayed through the WFDSS decision to an IAP to the 204s, I can explain that very thoroughly. And I look forward to that opportunity if there's anybody that wants to know. Okay. So now there's a new WFDSS, right? We went through WFDSS. We finally got WFDSS in 2009. WFDSS was built up until basically 2024. And in 2024, we transitioned from WFDSS, what we called WFDSS Classic, we still call it WFDSS Classic, to WFDSS Next Generation. And WFDSS Next Generation is much more map focused. It's an AGOL product. The previous WFDSS was not an AGOL product, but it had the very earliest AGOL map-based type information that I've ever seen in any of our fire applications. And that became what killed WFDSS, is just the cost of maintaining all of that GIS support. That's why basically they finally decided to do away with old WFDSS and switch to WFDSS Next Generation, is because they could finally incorporate all the AGOL aspects into WFDSS Next Generation and do it much more efficiently than what they were doing under WFDSS Classic. So it's map focused, scalable, intuitive. It relies on national feature service layers, so it's not a static map. It's a dynamic map, and all of the map layers in WFDSS are dynamic map layers that are loaded through hosted feature services. The safety layers incorporate the RMA dashboard analytics as well. So all those analytics that we've been talking to over the last couple of years, whether it's suppression difficulty index, potential control locations, ground evacuation time, snag hazard, all of those layers are also available in WFDS now. So it integrates with ISAP in that you can display those spatially within your WFDS decision and talk to those through quantification as well. It is tied into the fire modeling services framework. That's maybe one of the limitations of WFDS in its current state. We currently only have FS Pro fire modeling in WFDS. We can't do any what we used to call short-term or near-term fire modeling. That's not available in WFDS as of yet. We can do that in IFTDIS, or you can do that in FlamMap. But you can't do it in WFDS as you used to be able to. So hopefully in the future we get that updated, but that's been kind of caught up in some of the budgetary constraints over the last year or so. It also interfaces with FIMS. So yeah, good news, right? February, we had our fire danger workshop and we learned all about FIMS. WFDS is going to bring in FIMS information for fire modeling purposes. And it also, is a good way to display weather information as well. And then obviously Spatial Fire Planning Service, that brings in all of the text-based direction that we put into our WFDS decisions. Excuse me, that is ingested by through the Spatial Fire Planning Service. And we have the ability to edit all of that language in Spatial Fire Planning Service whenever we want. Under old WFDS, we had to work through a process. There was a data update process where we had certain windows. We only had like 6-7 windows a year where we could get our data updated. With Spatial Fire Planning Service, we no longer have those windows. So we have basically at the local level, you have full access to your data. You can edit the text on the fly whenever you need to, and you have somebody locally that can make those edits. Some of the other major improvements since the rollout, and I need to get my laser pointer going here, just so I can use this, yeah. Collaboration with multiple approvers, that's definitely a big one now, right? We just got our Wildland Fire Service Transitional Authorities document, and now everybody approves WFDS decisions. So we need to make sure we can have multiple approvers on there. The PMS 236, that should say 236. I'm sorry, I got a little touch of dyslexia every now and then, and I didn't see that. That should say PMS 236. That's fully incorporated into WFDS. That is the risk complexity assessment that is required on every incident, whether that's a type 4, type 3, or any incident. If you do a WFDS decision, that satisfies the requirement for the completion of the PMS 236 on the BLM side. It does read from Irwin, so incidents says dispatch builds incidents. WFDS ingests those through the Irwin feed, so no need to manually create incidents or do anything manually. Everything should be initiated through Wildcat and through that Irwin feed, just like all of our other systems. And now we have automatic validation of required decision elements. Last year we had the checklist, right, but it didn't populate. Now we actually have the populating checklist. So as you go through WFDS and you complete each of those sections, it populates the checklist and it shows you what you still need to do. So we'll get into that more as we get into it. Some of the things that are not going to be present, though, during the 2026 season, and the one I'm going to highlight here, well, this is important too, no user notifications. We keep impressing on the WFDS developers, that user notifications are pretty important, whether those are planning area notifications, such as we used to get, or decision approval notifications. Right now, WFDS does no notifications, doesn't even send out an email type thing. So there's no notifications coming out of WFDS. And then there's no additional fire modeling, fire behavior modeling. And as we talked, you can accomplish that through Farsight and FlamMap. Those are both standalone programs that most fire behavior analysts have access to. But we're finding that IFTDIS, and that's why we did the IFTDIS training in April as well, because IFTDIS can basically give us a minimum travel time model, which is a deterministic fire model, which will give you progression, perimeter spread, and also give you minimum paths of travel. So as from an operations side, you can take a look at that and you can kind of see if the fire squeezes through, where my pinch point's going to be and what can I do to maybe reinforce those pinch points type thing. So yeah, there's some cool fire modeling that you can do now too. For those, I put this in here just because Jason Fallon is the Intel branch director for the Wildland Fire Service. And during the RDNA refresher, I don't know how many of you guys were able to sit through the RDNA refresher. He actually spent a few minutes talking about the importance of WFDS. And I thought that was great because in all my years as a fire planner, I've always hoped that, somebody at the national office would take the time to actually explain how they use WFDS and, why it's important for us to get in and use WFDS. And I thought Jason Fallon did a real good job of kind of explaining why WFDS is important. So I wanted to include this slide just out of, just to make sure that we talk that over. But again, going through this transition, WFDS is going to be even more critical in my mind. And I know that as fire planner, I tend to over exaggerate the importance of certain things, but I think WFDS is going to be a key common operating picture for incident commanders, agency administrators, bureau representatives, and whatever else needs to be involved in that, right? So WFDS is going to be a key aspect of being able to accomplish that. Within the new WFDS, we simplified the roles down from 12 roles down to 5. All of the roles in blue were the old roles. The roles here in green are the new roles. So most of you need to have this editor role. If you just default, go into FAMOTH and just stick with the default, all you're going to get is viewer. And viewer role in NextGen WFDS doesn't buy you anything until the WFDS decisions are published. But being able to get into an unpublished decision, you can't do anything as a viewer. So make sure that you're requesting that editor role. If you have, there's a certain training that's required for fire behavior analyst. This is not the fire behavior analyst position in IQCS. This is a fire behavior analyst role in WFDS that on the BLM side, I think it's accomplished through S495. If you take an S495, I can award you fire behavior analyst in WFDS production, and you can do fire behavior modeling in WFDS production or WFDS. I can give anybody the role in WFDS EDU. So if you want the role in EDU, I can give anybody the role in EDU, but there are some minimum training requirements to have a fire behavior role in production. And I need to look at them, but I believe that S495 was the minimum required training.
Quick question on that.
Yeah.
We check to make sure what rules we have.
How do you check?
Yeah,
You would log into your FAMOTH profile.
I'm in it, but I'm just like, where in the FAMOTH profile do I check?
I can show you when I get to that portion.
Fantastic.
Yep,
Okay, great.
Yep,
Thank
I can show you when I get to the FAMOTH portion. Okay, rules. The other thing we're going to talk about is fire behavior modeling. As a geographic area editor, that's also my role within WFDS. I'm a geographic area editor. That means that any request for fire modeling, I can help you with those if you want me to do those. If you want me to elevate those roles onto an actual FBAN or an LTAN, a long-term fire analyst, I can work to find those folks if they're available. Or I can just put in a request with RIST and get fire behavior modeling done as well. But the key point that I'm really trying to make in this year's training is that we need to get that FS Pro run initiated right off the bat. So whether you can do that locally or whether you can do that, if you need assistance through me as a GAE, let me know. But it's important that we get those FS Pro runs modeled because all of the new processes that are being touted, such as the incident prioritization worksheets, those are reliant on fire behavior runs to determine what that risk to values are. Certain different worksheets use different areas. For example, some may use a planning area and they just may pull in all the values at risk in the WFDS planning area. But more often than not, we're falling back to fire modeling and using those FS Pro runs to model the risk within that 50 percentile band. So what that does is that minimizes, how FS Pro runs, there's always those rare events that, keep going and keep going and keep going. If you just stick to the 50th percentile or greater, you can really kind of narrow that window out and look at a lot more relevant data. But these are all, if you do want to do some, each of these types of fire behavior modeling is still available with the right SME. So basic fire behavior, short-term fire behavior, near-term fire behavior, while they're not available, well, basic fire behavior is available in a way through WFDS, but FS Pro, that probability spread, that's the one fire model that is supported by WFDS. The rest are going to be either through WFDS or standalone models, and you're going to need an FBAN or some level of qualification to run that. All right, so the risk-informed decision process, again, it starts with information gathering, and then it goes into analysis, and then it goes into synthesis, and then we affirm the analysis, is the plan good or the assumptions correct? And then we go into archival and documentation and implementation, and then we start the process all over again. So this slide that's all that's meant to do is that WFDS process, we start, here, and we go through the WFDS process under the analysis and the synthesis. And then in step 4, we're coming up with the plan, we're documenting that plan, we're implementing that plan. And then it's just a continual process that we do. In some cases, it may be day after day after day. In some cases, it may be every 3 days. In some cases, it may be every 4 days, There are certain policies, though, that I think are important to cover. The slide references the 2025 Red Book. Obviously, we still don't have our 2026 Red Book issued yet. There are going to be some minor changes to some of the policies that we talked about in the 2026 Red Book. So just keep that in mind when it comes out. I do want to highlight, though, that ICs, even, type 4, type 3 ICs have the responsibility of working and making sure that they provide their input into WFDS, whether that be at the request of the agency administrator, the request of the bureau rep. The IC has a responsibility in the Red Book to make sure that they are part of that WFDS process. And that's all I wanted to highlight here. The policy for WFDS decisions specifically, this is it. So I get asked a lot of questions, what do our WFDS decisions have to have in them? And really, this is the policy. A published WFDS decision has strategic direction from your land and resource management plan, which is also summarized in your FMP. It has incident objectives, incident requirements. It's got management strategies and a course of action. It's got an estimated cost. It's got all the affected jurisdictions. It's got the agency administrators showing that they have reviewed and approved the decision. And then it also falls within the framework of the delegation of authority, and it authorizes that IC to operate within that unit. So those are really the only requirements of what has to go into a WFDS decision. You have a lot of creativity. You have a lot of latitude and creativity in what you can put into a decision. As we get into the day, I'm going to, my process is that first decision, and this is something new to me. I used to focus on getting a perfect decision and having a decision, that first decision be your last decision. That was always my process in WFDS. Now, with how WFDS is formatted, you're going to be doing multiple decisions. You're going to do a decision every day. Every day that you do your periodic assessment, you are republishing a decision. That's all a periodic assessment is now, is you're republishing a decision in WFDS. So that first decision, minimum viable product, make sure it's got these elements in there, make sure it's got good leader's intent, good direction, get it out the door, get it published. Don't let that hold you up. The second decision, the third decision, the fourth decision, those are the decisions that you really build up, right? And you add all that extra documentation in there, you add all that extra rationalization and so forth. But as far as minimum requirements for a WFDS decision, this is basically what's in the Red Book, right? The initial decision, again, there isn't a set day, right? All fires will have a published decision in WFDS if they escape initial attack, exceed initial response, or they include objectives for both protection and resource benefit elements. So what that means is we're doing something other than full suppression, what we used to call other than full suppression. I know we're going through transition there too. We don't even know what we're calling it now, but that's basically what that means. So that's when you have to have a decision. That can be interpreted differently, right, Ty?
Absolutely. It's a gray area, and thank goodness. But is there still the requirement for acres? Remember those?
No. Yeah, no, like you talking like the 100, 300?
Yeah.
That's still a 209 thing, I mean, it is still 209 as far as that's when you should report,
Yeah.
but that has no bearing on whether or not it needs
I
to be.
remember we just kind of like gave what this is on that, like, well, we're
Right.
gonna catch it tonight.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
100 acres,
You know, and I think there still is a consideration for size, you know, I mean, if you're on day 4 of a 5-acre fire and you know it's gonna be out on day 5, you're probably not gonna wanna do them, but if you're on day 4 of a 300-acre fire, you know, a little different scenario, right? So, but yeah, these are really the only requirements. So I get asked, when do we need to do a decision? And it's, you know, this is the gray area, when it escapes initial attack, you know, or when it exceeds initial response. That could be day 2, that could be day 3. That could be day 5, you know, for most units. So be thinking about that. There is no hard and fast date. I would like to think though that if anywhere within that first 5 days, if your WFDSS decision is more than 5 days after the start of the fire, you're probably playing catch up, realistically, right? So just think about it that way. New decisions are required when course of action is no longer valid. If the fire moves beyond your planning area, if the incident exceeds established agency cost thresholds, which there are no more cost thresholds for the Wildland Fire Service, but Forest Service still has cost thresholds, right?
I believe so.
Okay, yep. Still the $5 and $10 million, I would assume, or, okay, yeah. But there is some level of cost threshold in the Forest Service that we need to be cognizant of. And then some considerations, new decisions, its costs are expected to exceed final costs in the current decision. Our management action points have changed since the decision was published. We really don't use management action points. You can still call them management action points if you wanted to, but management action points are kind of an outdated term now that we've gone into strategic courses of action within WFDSS. A few more slides and we'll take a break before we get into WFDSS. All right, so there is some documentation that's required regarding jurisdictional agencies. And basically, if we have a cooperating agency, if they have any jurisdictional responsibility within the planning area, they become a WFDSS approver at that point. So there is varying levels of engagement that those cooperators may have based off of how much land they have, what the actual threat to their jurisdictions are. Maybe the threat is come and gone already, you know, type thing. So there's some language in the red book that is required. And this is also in the WFDSS guide, but whenever we have those other jurisdictional agencies, this language should be included in the WFDSS decision, depending on what their level of engagement is. The other things I wanted to highlight on this slide, and this is again outdated. BLMs will no longer have an AADM. It will be the BLM Bureau Representative, but this could also be applied to the Wildland Fire Service AADM as well. And basically this states that anything on our jurisdiction, we have to be a WFDSS approver on. And what that falls back to is if another agency decides not to include us, we can show in the policy that says this requires us to be an approver within your decision. So that's how you can utilize that policy if you need to. The use of strategic planning on wildland fires. This is a fairly new concept for BLM. This was a new addition to the Red Book just last year. Some people may know about it, some people may not, but basically what this requires is that anytime you have a complex incident management team assigned, BLM will be required to participate in some form of strategic planning. It does mention that ISAP, the Incident Strategic Alignment Process, may be utilized to ensure alignment between incident management teams and agency administrators. More than likely, if you're working with the Forest Service, you will use the ISAP process because that's what they use, but it doesn't require BLM to use ISAP. But what I like to tell everybody is if you don't like ISAP, show me a better process. And if you can't show me a better process, then use ISAP because ISAP is the best process we got right now. But if there's a better process out there, show it to me. And yeah, I'd love to learn it. And why that is important, and this slide here was taken from Sam Amato, copied it over from one of his presentations. And the point is that when we're doing ISAP, and whether we call it ISAP or we just call it strategic alignment, it all starts with this very first pillar. And that first pillar is identification of critical values at risk. And we can do that in the WFDSS decision, right? If we publish a good quality WFDSS decision, we can document every critical value at risk, and we can document what the agency's priorities are in protecting those values as well. And if we can do that in that first decision, we set that team up for success, because normally when a team comes in, they're using day 1 and day 2 to help get their feet under them and figure out what those values are, go through that ISAP process, work it into their strap meetings. If they're doing formalized ISAP, work it in with their other meetings. And then after a couple of days, they have a good ISAP plan that's, fully vested and fully approved by everybody. But if in our WFDSS decisions, if we can start that process out and get this first pillar stood up by identifying those critical values at risk and prioritizing those values in our WFDSS decision, it makes everything else speed up, and it helps, helps the team be successful on the ground in day 1 and day 2 instead of getting their feet under them on day 1 and day 2. So, Sheena, I know you got some experience in that, right? I mean, WFDSS decisions, right? A good documented WFDSS decision with critical values at risk prioritized. How much easier does that make it on you as an ops chief?
Oh, especially if in regards to the critical value risk, getting it narrowed down to like that top manageable number versus arriving at an incident which actually happened and we had 23 that were not ranked.
Yep.
And guiding that AA on those conversations took us about 3 days.
Yep. As a plans chief, I often tell my agency administrators, if you have more than 10 priorities, you have no priorities because we can't do any of them. So if you're coming up with priorities, keep it less than 10 and we can probably manage that list. Okay. The other point I wanted to make is last year I started working on this WFDSS scorecard, and I know this is pretty hard to read in the PowerPoint. If you click on the link or if you click on the link tree, it'll bring it up too. But basically what I've done is all of last year's decisions, I went through and created kind of a matrix of, do they have this element in the decision or do they not have this element? And again, none of this is required. None of these elements are required, but these are the things that we can build into our decisions to help make them better on days 3, 4, and 5 of an incident. So each of those things that are on this list right here, I have included on the checklist now that's part of the WFDSS guide. And these are some of the things that I use as a SOPL, I created this for when I go out as a strategic operational planner. We'll go into a forest that has 20 fires going, right? They've had teams on a fire all summer long, and they've had varying levels of WFDSS decisions. I use this tool to help prioritize what WFDSS decisions do I need to look at, which ones truly need my attention right now, which ones can wait for a week type thing. But I've kind of developed this scorecard for our Nevada fires as well. So by all means, and I do it, as a scorecard just to, maybe add a little competition into it. But by no means am I trying to point anybody out or anything like that. But again, if you want to make a great decision, these are some of the elements that you can put into those decisions to make them better than just having a regular decision. And then I'm not going to cover this as much. This is the information coming out of the authorities table. And then I was covering this when I first started doing the WFDSS trainings a month ago, just because it was still fresh. I'm hoping by now we beat this to death, more or less, between the bureaus and the Wildland Fire Service. But what I do want to highlight are some important things like Spatial Fire Planning Service data. We're going to have to come up with a process where annually we sit down with the bureaus, we sit down with the fire service chiefs, and we go through our spatial fire planning data. We identify gaps and we identify what needs updated and identify what timeframes that needs updated by, right? So these are all new things that I think we're going to have to identify as far as process goes. Ordering the teams, that's going to be coordinated between the Wildland Fire Service and the bureaus, obviously. So I think it's going to be important that we have, some enhanced communication when you start getting to that point, obviously. And I know that you guys locally are talking about that already too. And this slide here, the WFDSS decision approvals, again, this is something new, right? We're going into the season. Used to be the jurisdictional agency administrator, however many there were. They were the line officers. They were the signature authority on the WFDSS decision. Now we've got multiple signature authorities on the WFDSS. So, my question is in the event that there's conflict between those two or those three decision makers, what is that process to come to a resolution or to come to a decision look like? Pass it up the chain is the best that we can say at this point, right? So on the Forest Service side, they would go, up their chain. On the BLM side, they would go up their chain. And on the Fire Service side, we would go up our chain to the geographic area chief or to the chief. So Hopefully there isn't a lot of conflict, you know, but if there is, we just need to make sure that we identify what does that process look to resolve that conflict.
So what I'm gathering is your plan or your procedure now is that if you had a fire and you're doing a WFDSS decision, you would have an agency administrator from, say, the BLM and an agency administrator from the Wildland Fire Service would both be the signature.
Yes. And technically, if we want to get technical, they are now bureau reps from the BLM. The agency administrator is the Wildland Fire Service unit chief.
Now
They sign the delegation authority, yes, but the bureau rep signs the leader's intent letter and is also the second signature on the WFDSS decision. In addition to whatever Forest Service signatures there are as well, right?
Yeah.
Yep,
cross
exactly.
barrier.
Exactly. Okay, so yeah, questions on any of that? Yeah, all right, let's take a quick 10-minute break and we'll be back in here at 9 o'clock and we'll go into actual WFDSS. Oh yeah, Sheena was nice enough to provide coffee and donuts too, so.
Keep up the good
Yeah,
work.
Hey, thanks.
I saw that and then, saw that document, ownership that they have with.
The folks online. And then we'll go ahead and I'm still sharing my screen. We're done with the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so I did want to show a couple of things before I get too far into WFDSS. One would be in FAMOF itself. Your FAMOF is going to look a little different. Let me do this. So this would be, if you want to check in FAMOF and see what your profile is, you log into FAMOF. And then once you log into FAMOF, you click on the little caret up here in the upper right-hand window, go up to edit view profile. And then from here, you can see your profile. You should be able to edit any of this information as you need to. So again, if you move jobs, feel free to edit that, make sure it's updated. And then as you get into here, all of your application roles are in here. So I've got a pretty long list. Some of you may have a long list too. But that's how you can see what roles you have in FAMOF if you want to look at your roles in FAMOF. And again, FAMOF is important, yeah.
I know it's not a WFDSS question, but it's a fire question. So in FAMOF, there's that location-based tracking deal. Who do we contact to get access in that?
Where is the?
I'll show you later.
Okay, yeah.
I thought maybe it was you.
No, yeah, I've been following that. There's a lot of new stuff with that location-based tracking going on. I know that, yeah. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so that's how you can get into FAMOF and check your profile. Again, with the FAMOF, you can request access to any of those. You know, you come in here, any of these things that are on here, any of the applications, you can request access to those through FAMOF. It sends a request up, has to get approved, but basically for WFDSS, you just need WFDSS Next Gen and WFDSS EDU. You'll see a couple other tiles in FAMOF, WFDSS OAT or WFDSS UAT. Those are platforms you don't need. Those are for developers and for testers and so forth like that. So just keep that in mind. And then when you log into WFDSS itself, I'm already logged into WFDSS. Sorry about that. When you log into WFDSS itself, I'm going to go ahead and go into the profile. And actually, I'm going to go all the way to outside of WFDSS because I want to highlight a couple different things. One, you can log into WFDSS production using this link. You log into WFDSS training or EDU using this link, right? So keep that in mind. We're going to be focusing in EDU all day long. You know you're in EDU because you have the green bar going across the top of the screen. And again, WFDS is map-based, and there's latency issues with the map loading sometimes. So you need to be real patient with the map. It loads pretty quickly here when you're on incidents, but when you get into the actual incident map itself, it can get kind of laggy sometimes. So before we get into the incident map, we're going to go into view profile because this is an important step as well. Again, this is one of the things that I highlighted in the agenda for the folks that are not able to take part in the training. If you're at least able to get in and do this. So I'm talking to the folks that may be watching the YouTube recording somewhere down the road. Pay no attention to the unit. The unit is a bug that's in WFDS. I can go through, find my unit, put it in there, think everything's good. I hit save, I get out of my profile, I go right back into my profile, it's wiped out again. So don't worry about the unit. The unit's not important right now. What is important is the geographic area. Obviously, we're in the Great Basin. You can go ahead and check off these notifications if you want, but you're not going to get notifications. And you can also include a secondary email address if you want. I'm not sure what the intent of the secondary email address is. I haven't gotten any emails from WFDS yet to that secondary address, but I still have it in there. So I would encourage you to do the same too. Even if WFDS doesn't use it, the fact that it puts it into a directory makes it valuable, because somebody who's trying to find you to get a hold of you, they would see not only my FireNet email address, but also my BLM email address. The important one is this one here, though. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck it. It's going to ask me yes, but then I'm going to check it again. By checking this box, I'm certifying that I meet my agency's policy to act as an agency administrator. So this is all that I need to say that I'm an agency administrator in the grand scheme of things. All the training requirements, everything else, I just need to answer that certification box, yes, tell it that I'm an approver, and then this makes me an approver. So
for bureau reps, do we still check the agency
yes,
administrator box? Okay.
you are an approver, yes. Yes, if you are a bureau rep, you are an approver, and you need to have that approver box checked. Thank you for asking the question. That's the message I was trying to deliver right there. So any questions on the profile itself? No? You can go through and look at GAE. I should have hit save. If you go through, you can look at the geographic area. You can set your geographic area. You can remove that from here. I don't know if everybody has this. I think that's just my tabs. So I'm going to go into the system preferences. Just like anything else, you can set your initial page. You can have it my home. I'm going to show you what my home looks like in a little bit. Incidents goes directly to the map. Reports goes to the reports tab, and notifications doesn't go anywhere right now. So I don't even know why they have that on there. The default map view, of course, if you set Great Basin, that's our normal map view, but you can change that for any geographic area you want. And you can also set your default map base. So I always like that National Geographic map. But if you liked imagery, or if you like NA players, or you like any of these other normal AGOL background default base maps, you can load those there. So you can look at the notifications, alert preferences, but most tabs you'll see this area is under development. So there's nothing that's going to show up there. Before we get into the My Home, I am going to show you the report section, because this is new from last year as well. You can now load WFDS Classic decisions. You can pull the WFDS Classic decisions from WFDS NextGen as well. And you can do it using these filters right here. So if you know any of these names, the incident name, incident size, any of this information in here, you can give it a date range and you can filter down. Now, I'm not going to do it on here because it's going to filter to the incidents that are in training, and there's only a handful of incidents in training, obviously. But if you were in production, you would have access to all of those WFDS Classic decisions. So that's important, because as a SOPL, I don't do a new decision every time I go to a fire. I grab the last decision that was published for a general area, generally within 30 miles of my fire, and I grab that decision and I copy and paste everything from that decision into my first decision. So, that's important in how the workflow happens. The My Home is important. As you learn WFDS a little more, you'll start to add your incidents into either, you don't need to add them into My Active Incidents. They automatically get added into your active incidents if you're anywhere within those collaborators on that list. The incident watch list, though, this is what I like to use for monitoring Nevada fires, for example. Any Nevada fire that has a decision published for it, I put that in my watch list, and then it puts it in this big table. And you can see that there's a lot of information that goes into this table. So, if I'm looking at multiple incidents that are active right now, I can look at this table, and a lot of the information that I need to see is included in this table without actually having to go into the decision itself. So if you're a unit fire chief, if you're a unit that has multiple fires, be keeping that in mind, that you can add those incidents into your watch list, and then you can just sit there and look at this table, and you don't have to go into the decisions, and you can see each of these criteria as well. So from here, I'm going to go into the Hobson fire. And this is what we're going to use as our training incident. So if anybody that is in the room wants to be in the decision, as soon as the map loads up, this is the latency that I'm talking about. So you just have to be patient with it. You'll see that right now, as that blue wheel is spinning, I can't do anything right now. So get yourself a cup of coffee, take a deep breath. Once the blue spinning wheel stops, there's still map latency issues going on, but I can now at least work in the other sections. So we're going to continue to let that map load while we look in the collaborators. As of right now, these are the people that we have in this decision for the Hobson incident right now. We have Jake listed as point of contact just because Sheena had to take off, so I had to include somebody in the audience as a point of contact. We have Melanie, John, Sheena, myself as collaborators, and I am listed as an approver. If any of you who are not currently listed in here want to be included, we need to make sure, have you logged into WFDS EDU? Okay, then Jake will add. So Jake, will you add anybody else in the room that you can, do you know how to do that, Jake?
I do.
Okay.
But I just had to request access to the EDU profile. I was staring at the actual.
Oh, okay, copy
I
that.
also.
So let me go back into FAMOFF. And this is an important maybe teaching point as we're getting everything figured out. So within the collaborator list, what I want to highlight is the point of contact. Okay, so in WFDS, in old WFDS, we called that point of contact the incident owner. And the incident owner was the only one that could add people into the decision. The collaborator, the point of contact, now assumes that owner role. You can only have one POC in every decision, and that one POC is the only person that could add any other people into the decision. So whenever you create a WFDS decision, if you're the first author, you're probably going to make yourself a point of contact, right? That way you can add anybody else that you need to add. Where it gets sticky is when it's your day off or you leave to a fire on day 5 or 6 of the incident and you are still the point of contact. Then a GAE has to come in and assign roles because the point of contact is gone or can't do it or whatever. So just keep that in mind. If you're listed as a point of contact, if you're going to leave and you're not going to be available as that point of contact until that fire is out, make sure that you designate another point of contact in the WFDS decision, because that's the only person that can add new people. That make sense? Okay, Jake, so you said you got your request in FAMOFF?
Yeah. Request in.
Bear with me as I do this. I find this is a lot easier. And the other point is anybody that I just approved this morning, you need to log into WFDS EDU before we can even see you as a collaborator. So we can't even add you as a collaborator until you've initially logged into WFDS EDU and WFDS EDU knows that you have a profile. So if you just requested your access this morning, go ahead and log into WFDS EDU as I'm doing this.
Why did you add Jake as a collaborator if you didn't have him?
Because he was in as last year.
When I logged in prior to the class, I saw that EDU link.
Okay. You should be good to go now, Jake. You may need to log out and then log back in.
Check my,
Did you just request?
yeah.
Where there's no John Holmes.
Yes.
Did I spell your name wrong, John? I'm not seeing him anywhere in that list. Holmes, right?
Yeah.
What's that?
I'll come back to your profile, John. I don't see where you're at. Okay, Jake, are you in there now though?
Yep.
Okay, so you're able to add new users? Anybody that you can't find, that just means they need to log into EDU, so. Okay, so Jake can continue to add users. And as he's adding users, I'm gonna continue just to kind of talk through this, and then we're gonna hit a point where I'm gonna let you guys look at the map and work on the map for a while, and then I'll get back into FAMOTH and approve any other requests that are in there. So now that we've got the collaborators going, Jake's working on that. You can see that the map finally loaded, right? It did take a long time for that map to load. One tip that I wanna, if you're having issues with the map loading, don't hit the refresh button or the reload button. Remember, just like in WFDS, that would always kind of screw things up. In WFDS, if you just tab over, like in here, if I tab over to analysis, then tab back over to incident info, and generally that's enough to rekey the map and make it go back out to the server and refresh itself. And that's kind of a good way just to refresh the map. So whenever you first log into the map, you're going to get all these gobbledygook layers, and to turn those off, go up into incident and uncheck initial planning area and strategic assessments and strategic course of actions. And that'll get it back down to what we're used to looking at with that initial screen, right? So again, the Hobson fire is one of the ones that we're looking at. This is an actual fire, I think, right, from 2024, John?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. We built this incident last year for the training, and it's just south of Ruby Lake Refuge on the Ely side of the Maverick Springs Range. And as you can see, as we get going into the incident, it's got quite a bit of potential. We did some fire behavior modeling. I'm going to pull in and show you guys right now under the FS Pro results, if you guys want to look at it within your maps. And whenever, like you're in the analysis, notice how I checked FS Pro, nothing's loaded, right? Nothing's loaded. That's because I need to go back up to the root and check the analysis portion as well, and then that will load. So you'll have to excuse my fire behavior modeling here. I didn't draw the extent. I should have drawn the landscape extent maybe a little further down to the south to include some of those areas where the fire is going to back, but I didn't. So we're going to stick with this as the fire behavior model just to show potential for where this fire may go.
So I'm
And
struggling to find the Hobson fire, if we can kind of just go back to just finding it, so I can
So to find the initial incident, either you need to have it added in or from my home, or from incidents, I'm sorry.
So from incidents, how do I find it in incidents?
Let me show you. Okay, so this is what your incidence looks like, right? Zoom in. Find Ruby Lake Refuge and then just keep zooming in. And you should have this symbol somewhere on your map. Once you find that symbol, this is kind of the tricky part. You have to actually click on the WFDSS symbol.
Take it.
Well, that's your first thing you need to figure out, where Ruby Lake is. And then once you find it, just click on that WFDSS symbol and then click on Go to Decision. Everybody else able to find it okay from the map?
You're added as an approver. If you go to my home, it should pop up
Mm-hmm.
on a list there.
Okay, I think this must be it.
She's not in an approver yet.
I just, that,
Now she's added as an approver. Okay.
hopefully, I mean.
You see me in there for the viewer?
I do not see.
I think I just had production, I just asked for.
Okay,
Access to.
Able to get to it?
Go to my home.
Mhm.
Yep.
You can go ahead and click that. It'll have the list of the instances you put added to.
Yeah, I mean, since I hadn't been added it.
Yeah.
But he just added you as an approver. So now that he's added you as an approver, that will show up. Okay, good reminder though. So is everybody else on the incident now? Okay, again, if the map takes a little bit while to load. So the very first thing that we look at, that when, at least from my perspective, when I come into an incident, is I want to request that fire behavior modeling, right? And I showed you guys, I'm going to show you guys the analysis itself again, just to kind of talk through what it means and show you what it means. And within FS Pro, when you do an FS Pro run, you get 3 different outputs, basically. You get average arrival time, you get average flame length, and burn probability. The burn probability is a probabilistic model. So whenever you look at a probabilistic model, people like to look at these and think that this is what the perimeter is going to look like. That is not a perimeter. That's not a deterministic perimeter model that's an output. It's telling you that anywhere within this band, anywhere, like, for example, I'll bring the legend up so you can see it. So you can see what those probabilities are. Anywhere within this dark blue band, there is a 0.2 to a 4% chance of a 30-meter pixel being impacted by fire within that band. It's not telling you that the fire is going to burn to this edge. It's telling you that anywhere within this blue area, there is a 0.2 to 4% chance that fire is going to impact a 30 square meter pixel within that area. So that's all that means, right? If you look at, if you go back to the legend and come back into here, we're going to uncheck burn probability and we're going to check average arrival time. The average arrival time can be used to determine what time range you have until that fire impacting that probability is going to be as well too. So within here, again, you can look at the legend. Legend shows that at least in this run, and this is not calibrated by any imagination. So, it's not real accurate probably, but day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, working out. And again, that's not going to say that fire perimeter is going to get that big. It's saying that on day 4, anywhere within this band right here, you have a higher probability of that fire impacting than you have outside of that band. That's what it's telling you. No more, no less, right? The other key element that you can get from the FS Pro modeling is average flame length, right? So again, this is not meant to inform a firefighter on the ground that, hey, you're getting 12-foot flame lengths, you need a dozer. This is for your quantification of what is your risk to values, right? If you have critical values at risk out in front of this fire, somewhere out in here, if they get impacted and within that pixel, again, we'll pull up the legend so you can see what the legend says, but if they are, if they're a value that are going to be impacted by anywhere between greater than 11-foot flame lengths, that's probably a catastrophic impact, right? That's probably a pretty catastrophic impact to that value, depending on whether or not it's, depending on what the value is, I guess would be the best way to say it. If it's a cultural resource area, then sure, there's going to be a lot more impact. If it's a geologic formation, obviously that value is probably not going to have a lot of impact from the fire. So it depends on what those values are, but all of that can be determined from your FS Pro modeling. But in order to get that FS Pro modeling going, you need to request that right off the bat. So in order to get that FS Pro request in, you can either ask me for assistance as a GAE, or you can go direct into this form right here. And what this form does is you would fill out this form as a requester, as a local unit point of contact, working on a WFDSS decision. You would put your information in here, and then you would tell the incident, you would basically submit it, tell it what incident you're working on, and somebody in risk receives the order and they actually go into WFDSS, do your fire behavior model, do it in WFDSS, and then when it's ready, they send you an email, you log into WFDSS, you can look at it. Not going to get a lot of one-on-one time, but you're going to get somebody on the other end of the line who's going to do a FS Pro run for you in WFDSS and who will be able to get that in your decision to where you can utilize it. And again, right now we're looking at average flame length, but if we're looking at burn probability, I can use this. I can go to you as an agency administrator and I can say that based off the FS Pro run, this fire has a greater than 80% probability of burning these values. It has a 60% probability of burning these values. It has a 50% probability of burning these values, right? Anywhere outside that 50 percentile range, maybe getting a little outside of what the realm of possibility is. But within these three color bands right here, you know that these values are going to be impacted and you know what time frame you have until that impact is going to occur. So what can you do to mitigate that? What can you do to address that? Operationally, what considerations can you make to protect those values or, move on to the next value? So that's the important aspect of the fire behavior modeling. And I think it's important too that you understand that needs to be done basically as soon as possible. So what I'd like you guys to do is spend about the next 15, 20 minutes or so just working through the map, okay? This map has every bit of information you're probably ever going to want to look at on your fire. And I can sit here and talk to it for 15 minutes, or I can just let you guys free and just start playing with the maps. Go through each of the layers, look at what each of those layers are. And then when you have what you think is a map, a couple of the other things I want you to practice on is go over here to this print map, because from the print map, you can actually make a georeferenced PDF map that you can export directly out of WFDSS right here by selecting PDF, or you can do a JPEG map, which a JPEG is how we need to import the image into our WFDSS decision. But utilize that print function and play around with some of the different map templates that you can use, because it really does make it quite simple, right? And what this is again, WFDSS is map-based, it's map-focused, it's scalable. And now, rather than having to have all those additional things that we used to put in a WFDSS decision, you can basically go through here and start making the maps that you want to make. So be thinking about what you want on that map, right? Show the planning area boundary. What else do you want to show on that map? Do you want to show jurisdiction? Do you want to show critical values at risk? Play around with it, okay? You got about 15, 20 minutes to do that. So yeah, just go into the maps, play around with the maps, work on. And the other thing you can do too is, as far as loading maps into your decision, is just a simple cut and paste tool, right? So I'm using the snipping tool just like everything else. When I get my map, I I would actually want to have the legend up, but just to show you the process, I mean, all I got to do is come down here, clip that. Once that's ready to go, copy that, come over here into my decision, and then I can paste it into my decision. That's how easy it is to include maps in your decision now. So like I said, just work through that, go through the WFDSS decision. The other thing you want to play around with probably are the screen controls, you know, so here you can see that if I push that little arrow, it gets the text part of the window all the way over and gives you nothing but map on your screen. If I click that arrow back over, you know, it brings the text side over. And if I click it all the way over, it makes the text window big. So that's how you can format your screen. If you're working on the map, make it a big map. If you're working in the text, make it a big window over here, because when you're doing WFDSS now, everything is working left to right in sequential order. So you go left to right on these tabs, and then when you're working in each of these tabs, you'll see left to right tabs in each of these two that you have to work down, actually all the way down to the bottom of each of these screens, and then left to right as well. So play around with it for about 15, 20 minutes, look at the map, and I'm gonna make sure that we've got all of our FAMLOT approvals taken care of. But yeah, just play around for about 15, 20 minutes, take a look at the map, figure out what critical values at risk you have out there, and then we'll start looking at the decision itself and adding information in the decision. Yeah.
Right, you're not popping up as a potential collateral.
I just barely sent
Okay.
my education one to DLN. I'm good.
Alicia, you're not showing up online either, Alicia, so I don't know if you need to submit a request or not.
I'm just following along since I won't be in the whole time, but I'm in the regular, WFDSS, just not the EDU.
Okay, got it.
Hey, Dylan, so for the maps in the previous generation that I thought last year we used next gen, but you would do your map with like strategic objectives and stuff.
Mhm.
You have to, that won't go to the decision anymore?
Not automatically. You have to, as an editor,
Paste it.
yep, you have to copy paste it in.
I
Yep.
think that was the question I had for you.
Right, yep. Yeah, we've asked, you know, there's some things they could probably automate, but I think they really want to just make it just like this, where the editor just copies and pastes. I mean, yeah, right now you can add whatever you want to add.
Get my FS Pro results to show up on the map.
It takes a hot minute, it's a lot.
I'm signed into the production. I made sure I had that since it's like April. We're gonna have fire.
Well, she maybe didn't want to.
No, I didn't. The only thing exactly what the protocol was, either bring in.
What is that? There's bus coming on, so big. And I'm gonna just support you guys doing that, you know? I'll be cheering you on.
You, if you want.
I and John, you're both approved, so now you should be able to log into EDU.
And, check the. John.
And Jake and Sheen, I'll let you guys work out how you want to do POC.
Pass the buck.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. I'll be right back.
On your hand. Get in. And eventually.
Which is illegal.
She didn't.
I married.
She's.
Yeah. So excited she didn't shake her here.
Oh, yeah. Jake got it.
Yes, having conversations with Bill at all hours of the day and night. How the hell do I do this?
We got you covered.
She's building that.
Yeah. Sit over. We're gonna go back to. But.
I like them going in. See when I need it.
Say again?
I got you
I got-
on
I got the email saying I was pulling it in.
Right, they,
Is it just,
so, I'm doing my layer alert, I hit analysis. These things are blue.
Turn, so head up just real quick. Hit, click the landscape extent on. Okay.
FS Pro result.
Maybe close everything, sign out of Panama,
Turn those
sign
off.
back into
real
Panama,
quick.
and then do it. And then, if you're still having an issue,
Back on and then just hit the burn probability real quick. And then the down button maybe. What's happening here?
Yeah. Well, I hit my FS Pro results, see it's got gray boxes, instead of blue boxes. But it's not letting me
What's that?
get anything.
go back up to analysis.
Works. Just the extent.
And then the pew.
It's just the FS Pro results.
Should I have got it? Are you in that there? Is that?
Ignition. For Valentine's Day, I got you a shirt. And it says, I like me, Bill you.
Yeah, it should show up.
It's fitting for my husband.
Maybe log out and log back in again. So that's like the lamest excuse in the world. It normally works.
Well, that was, it wasn't showing me access.
Yeah, I don't know why you'd be able to see everything else but that.
I'm doing the same thing, actually.
I'm not the only one.
No.
I don't need one.
Analysis, calibrated machine. Probably.
Sorry, it's getting.
Yeah.
Don't get hung up on the FS Pro. That's, I mean, there's a lot of other layers in there that, we need to be looking at right now, and I'm fixing the FS Pro. That was a status thing, so, find the values at risk though. What values are you worried about for that fire?
See your pew in there. There it is.
Sorry, for somebody like me who touches this about once a year. Right, I'm up to speed on what's going on.
Right, yeah. And that's why, yep, just focus on the layers. I mean, focus on those existing layers that are in there. And
Button took me a while because it was hidden on my screen.
that's another part of it too. I mean, just like a lot of people, I can't operate without a mouse. I mean, I wouldn't be able to operate with just a touchpad. So, I mean, like when I see,
I've actually been thinking of grabbing my mouse out of my.
Right, yeah.
Because I can carry my, well, it's also on a laptop screen, but like, I
Right.
never work on a screen this
Right.
small.
all right, so how are we doing on the map? Are you guys able to see the FS Pro stuff now? You may have to get out of the map and log back in, but I did accept the run and I switched the status over to accepted for operational use. So that should make it to where any of the other editors can view it as well. And if not, again, like I said, what I want you guys to really focus in is just look at the layers that are in there. For example, our resource management considerations, natural resource concerns, all of these layers in here. We have sage grouse habitat, we've got infrastructure, utilities and transportation. This is a big one here, right? I mean, I don't know for this fire what kind of infrastructure we have out in front of it, but we can, real simply, click on that, zoom out for a little, zoom out a little bit and kind of see where all those infrastructure rights of ways are and whether or not any of those are going to get impacted by our fire or not. We can go through, look at facilities, for example. These are all federal facilities, so we can show housing and urban density in other ways, but when you look at these infrastructure facilities, these are all federal facilities that are loaded into WFDS. We have historic fuel treatments in WFDS as well, so if you know that you have some fuel treatments out in front of this fire that could potentially be used in the control of the fire, you can overlay those on there as well. Past fire perimeters, designated areas, so whether they're wilderness study area, IRA, all of those different designations are in here. We have grazing allotments. You'll notice because this is WFDS is based off of hosted feature service. A lot of times you'll see errors, like here we have an error in the HMA layer. That's just because the layer needs to be updated. So in some cases, you may not have access to everything, but in these designated areas, there's a lot of information in there. Within the boundaries section, again, jurisdictional units. So again, check on boundaries, check on jurisdictional unit. You can see here that, as long as the fire continues what it's doing, it's going to primarily impact BLM. If it gets any further to the north, there's potential for private. There's tribal allotments in here. Over here on this side, we've got Fish and Wildlife Service jurisdiction, of course. So you can look at the jurisdiction layer. That's your initial inkling to who else are my agency administrators, right? You look at those jurisdictional layers and you try to figure out, just based off of past work relationships, who those agency administrators are, who needs to be involved. So I'm going to turn those jurisdictionals off. This is a really cool feature, I think, that's been added over the last year or so, is a lot of the fire environment and weather. We can do raw stations, we can even look at the wind, right? So if you want to pull up the raw stations and see what the wind are at those raw stations, you can put that on your map, right? And then this can become part of your WFDSS decision. So if you want to show that, right now we're only getting 6-mile-an-hour winds at Ruby Lake Ross Station, but when I did this run, I probably did like a 15-20-mile-an-hour wind based off of that being an afternoon gust, right? So you can put all that into your map and help with telling the story, right? I mean, each of these pieces of information helps tell the story to somebody. So whether you look at that, heat detections, so any of the vires, anything that's coming off of vires or fire guard, you can put that into your map as well. So that not only shows, perimeter, but it shows active parts of the perimeter, where your fire is most active at. You can look at, any of your NFDRS indices through here. You can look at ERCs, you can look at BIs. All of those have been added into the map now. Some of the other cool things here are precipitation estimates. So if you want to see precipitation estimates for like the last 48 hours, or if you want to see forecasts for the next 48 hours, you can look at that. Are we going to get rain? How dry is it? Type thing. All of that is available within the WFDSS map. And we're still not even done, right? You go into fire safety, housing unit density, population density, all of those information, all of those metrics are in there. So again, probably not going to be a lot of housing density out there at Ruby Valley, but if we scroll out there and give it a second to load, we don't want suppression difficulty index on there, but you can kind of see here it's picking up on where those WUI areas are. So here, obviously not a lot out in Ruby Valley, but if we zoom in and look across the hill, whether it's Spring Creek, Elko, Wells, any of those other areas, any of those communities, that information pops up right there and helps to kind of quantify what that information as well is. Snag hazards, these are all good layers to look at, especially when you're looking at risk and what the risk to firefighters is. National Incident Reference. So this is going to pull in all of the information that comes in from National Incident Feature Service. The analysis, we've been taking a look at that, and then the incident. So one of the things that I like to talk to is the planning area. And when we talk about the planning area, again, I like to go back and I go into the operational fire planning, because under operational fire planning, we have our pod polygons, and that's what I'm trying to get right here. So with those pod polygons, remember the pod polygons were designated pod polygons. So the pod polygons were designated as like predetermined planning area boundaries, right? When we went through the effort and we designated these pod boundaries. And so what pod boundaries are potential operational delineations. If I click on one of these on the map, hopefully, I got this one too. That's what. So that's planning area. We'll get to the pods. So this is the Ruby Valley pod, for example, and you can see here that the pod information itself doesn't have that much information, but if you look at the pod summaries quantify all that risk information. So if we look at the pod summaries, you can look at population, you can look at feet or miles of power lines, you can look at miles of pipeline, all that information. But basically what we did with those pods is we say that those pods are going to be our pre-identified planning area boundaries. Or if we need to grab multiple pods, like we did in this case, we can grab multiple pods and include them in one large planning area boundary. So to draw the planning area boundary, you can do a couple different options, right? You can come in here and do the drawing tool. And when we do the drawing tool, you can select which of these features you're trying to draw. In our case, we're going to do the planning area. And then it's simply just clicking on the polygon and then coming over here and drawing a polygon. And there's a little bit of latency too with the map. You can see here, there it goes. It finally took that first click. It took about 10 or 15 seconds for that to register. So it's really frustrating if you're not aware what's going on. But after it gets going, it's just like anything else. Every time you click the mouse, it's going to drop a vertex. And in this case, I'm just going to stick with this boundary right here because for whatever reason, we liked it last year. And we're probably going to like it again this year. Get to the corner. grab that, grab that. And boom. Once it does that, you can hit save. That now becomes our planning area. Are you sure you want to replace it? Hit OK. And this is really the first step in doing a WFDSS decision, is deciding what this planning area boundary is, right? And that's why when we did the pod boundaries, at least from my perspective, I was really key on trying to identify those as initial planning area boundary. Because as a fire planner, if you tell me what my planning area boundary is, I can give you everything you need from there, right? So knowing that determining this fire planning area is kind of it's different from place to place, right? Some places you're sitting down with the agency administrator, some places the FMO just says draw a box. Some places, you're following geographic references. But in our case, using the pod boundaries is probably the best tool that we have, because those pod boundaries are already quantifying our risk. If you go to the RMA dashboard and you look at those pod boundaries right now as they are, you can get a quantification of 100 different risk factors based off of population, based off of infrastructure, based off of utilities, based off of all that stuff that's on the risk management assistance dashboard. When we use those pod boundaries in WFDSS, though, there's some considerations you have to make. Like if you just take the pod boundary as is, as a planning area boundary, typically we clip those right off to the roads, right? So when you're drawing your planning area boundary, if you want to buffer those road systems a little bit to give your guys on the ground a little bit more of a road area to work with on your fire, you're going to want to come in here and draw that. Does that make sense? I mean, it's still as good as we can do, but when you're actually making it a planning area boundary, just realize that most of those pod boundaries are clipped right to the road system. So if you're going to use that road system to burn out on or as a holding feature, you're probably going to want to buffer that to 100 feet, 150 feet, 200 feet or whatever, just to make sure that our perimeter lines don't cross your planning area lines.
And tigers so much don't know. When we built pods, I built them all to pretty much encompass big areas that we should be able to keep, except for the Forest Service stuff. That's a little different, but most of our BLM land is built to, if it's on 2 pods, and it'll probably take both those pods.
Yep.
They should be good holding features.
Right. What else am I missing on them? I mean, the planning area is a pretty big discussion, right? I mean, that's usually a fairly significant discussion between FMO and agency administrator.
And we usually make them as big as we can, just so we don't ever have to go in and reestablish that planning unit boundary.
Yep.
So, but pods are great because we always look for roads because it's really easy to identify.
Yep.
It's not like a circle in the sky.
I think the whole part is 1 pod.
Okay.
Look at it, so
Yeah, I think it's all.
pretty sure there's no holding features once you get into that area.
Okay.
So be thinking about what maps you want included in your decision too. I kind of brought up the fact that this is how I like to make my maps, because I can title this, planning area. Whenever you make a map, you're going to want to make it landscape though. I almost screwed up. All of our WFDSS decisions are now formatted landscape, right? So when you make the maps that you're going to include in your decisions, you're going to want to format them as landscape as well. And I'm just going to export this map as is. I'm not going to put a lot of effort into it just because I want to show what it looks like. And it looks like I had some kind of failure message. So, of course, it doesn't work for me right now. But remember, the other option, if that doesn't work, you can always just come over here, do a screen capture. Whether you grab your map or, you grab that, you copy that. Okay, now that I've grabbed that, I'm going to go back into my decision, right? So now I'm in the decision. I'm going to go into relative risk. And whenever you go into sections, and I'll go back, real quick, just because I want to make sure that I'm not skipping anything. So, and I did skip something. I skipped something very important. After you redraw that planning area boundary, you always want to go back into spatial inventory. And what spatial inventory is whether it's a planning area or your landscape extent, you tell it that you want it to generate a spatial inventory. And what it does is it goes back, and now it's going to go back to my new planning area boundary, and it's going to reclip everything that's in WFDS to that planning area boundary. And it only takes a couple of minutes. So we'll sit here and wait for the blue bar to get done. And of course, that's going to make me a liar. It's going to take longer than a minute. So we'll go back, we'll go over to collaborators. How are we doing on the collaborators? Did everybody get in?
We got everybody in? Wants to be in?
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta be patient with this.
It's funny, your collaborators didn't update.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say after we looked at this. So again, big blue wheel, can't do anything, just be patient, wait. But you can see here kind of the start of that spatial inventory table anyway. It's going through, it's telling us that we've got 571,000 acres of White Pine County in our planning area. We've got 667,000 acres of Elko County in our planning area boundary. So that's going to be important to your Bureau reps because that's going to tell them which county commissioners they need to be talking to. Then you can go through, again, I'm kind of waiting for the blue wheel here, but all the jurisdictional units and something is happening. So, but that spatial inventory is basically a list of all of the values that are loaded into WFDS and what of those values fall within your planning area within that decision. So, back. All right, so we're having issues with that too. So let's get into relative risk. Hopefully we can start working on relative risk because this is where you guys are going to start driving the bus is in the relative risk section. So I'll come back to that. So when you get into relative risk, and as you are with any editors, first thing you're going to want to do is uncheck the ready for publication button. As an editor, that ready for publication button is basically what is allowing you to create a draft or not. So whenever that is unchecked, you're not able to work in the draft. So if you're not able to type in any text or do anything into the decision, you need to scroll down to the bottom of the screen and slide over ready for publication. That's more than likely your problem. Once you can do that, then you can see here that we can just start going through and working through each of these sections. So the one thing that I do want to caution folks on is there should only be one person editing per tab. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're doing editing. If you want to work in strategy, if you want to work in firefighter safety, if you want to work in organization complexity, if you want to work in any of these other tabs right now, you can. But because I am the only editor, I should be the only one working in relative risk right now. And the reason why that's important is because if you're sitting down just like you are right now in a room and you have two people doing edits into the same tab at the same time, only one of them's saves is going to take, only one of them are going to be able to save their edits. So if you're doing group editing like we're doing now, just keep that in mind. If I'm working in relative risk, somebody else should be working in strategy, somebody else should be working in firefighter safety. We don't want to have multiple editors working in a tab. So that's one of the considerations you're going to want to have going forward for working as a group. The other thing that I want to highlight here, and we'll go into hazards, just because within the fuel conditions, fire behavior. So you'll notice here we have all the text information, right? I'm gonna go ahead and each of these windows is the exact same thing. So every field in WFDS looks just like this that you can edit. And I'm gonna go ahead and just drop that last map that we created, right? So I can do that one of two ways. I did the screen capture like I just did, and I just pasted it directly in to the screen here. Or if I wanted to import, you can copy an image file, a JPEG file, and paste it in there, but it's basically doing the same thing. So once you drop it into your editing window, there's a few things you can do to edit it. The one thing I would highly recommend is resizing this, and Ty, I think you brought this up. WFDS still has a bug in it where your images, if they're too big, they will push the rest of the text down out of the decision. And in the PDF, it actually won't print. We had the same issue on Cottonwood Peak. We published, I think, three decisions for the Cottonwood Peak fire in Elko last year that had no approval decision on them because the program pushed it down out of the image. So that happens because we have these large images in there.
So is it
Yeah.
better to do the cut and snip or to export and say like?
Either or. Yep. Either way works works similar.
Okay.
Yep. Either way works similar. Both sides though, when you get it in here, I would reduce those images. So reduce it down to 75%. If it's a map, reduce it down to 75%. If it's anything that you need more to look at, that should solve most of your formatting issues. The other things you can do in here is now you can build bulleted lists. So if, for example, you wanted to come in here and build a bulleted list, just like any other editor, you can do that. Last year, we were telling people not to use bulleted lists because there was a bug in WFDS where it wasn't reading bulleted lists. That's fixed now. So you can put bulleted lists in there as well. If you want to build a table, you can come in here, you can build whatever type of table you want, and you can drop images, you can drop information into that table. So there's a lot of advanced text editing that's similar to an old WFDS. If you used old WFDS, there was an advanced editor in WFDS that you could actually make really good looking decisions out of. Within WFDS Next Generation, that advanced editor is just part of the normal WFDS decision. So you can do any of that here. Okay. So what I'm thinking would be best, and what you guys, however you guys want to do this, is we can use my screen. I can drive through it. But at this point, let's just work through the risk assessment, right? Let's work through relative risk, just like you guys would do for a fire. So Ty, Sheena, however you guys want to do it. I mean, we've got the Hobart fire. We've got a decision that we need to publish here by noon to get our IC out the door. What's your guys' process for when you have multiple people and you want to incorporate their input?
Head down. So what we've done in the past is get together, somebody from fire staff, try to get the resource specialist, like a little mini ID team.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll populate a lot of this stuff from past incidents because, we already have some sort of template language. Normally we'll cut and paste, or we'll have like a text box up there we can use.
Yep.
And then we'll, based on, resource values, which, can include everything from WUI to threatened and endangered species, active grazing, SRPs. We run into that, just warning you, down in Cameron's country. We've had to have race promoters change their race course, or stop the race early, or there's a lot of coordination, and we'll put that in WFDS as our decision, rationale of why we're doing it. So yeah, that's it's just a little mini ID team, unless it's at 9 o'clock at night and we're just throwing stuff in there as quickly as we can.
Right.
Get the decision published, and then we'll go back the next day and actually make it, fine tune it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a group like this, 3 or 4 people, we usually meet that side of the conference room, and or online now, it'd be even better.
Yeah.
So I did have a question, Dylan, that kind of came up the last couple of years with this, where multiple people trying to edit the same tab, basically. There was talk of having like a Teams chat text box in WFDS. You ever heard that one?
No, I haven't. I like the idea though.
Yeah, I sent that forward, because it'd be so nice, because, we branched a couple times, like with, I think, we'll send fires over into Utah or up into Elko,
Mhm.
to where instead of being on phone, we can have that text chat.
Mhm.
And then it also you can paste that into the decision record or decision,
Right.
and you also have more documentation of why we did this.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, that's great. Good idea. I hope they incorporate it.
yeah,
Right.
it'd be great. And then you can look back to, and like who was responsible for what, or
Right.
why, if something went wrong, did we mess up something?
Sure. Yep. That's a great way to do it. It's a great way to do it.
Yeah, normally we just, come up with probability, and we come up with the text box, and we just move on, as quickly as possible, knowing that we have the functionality to go in and fix it the next day, or fix it if something changes.
Right.
So kind of, the living document, not just get it done and be done.
Yeah, and that's the other mind shift for me, right? Is now that we're in this, like I said, in old WFDS, I was always do one decision and make it good enough to carry you from day 1 to day 10 type thing. Now with WFDS Next Generation, the fact that every periodic assessment, when you go in and do your periodic assessment, all you're doing is you're republishing the entire decision. So if you need to update anything, by all means, go in there and update the decision. Every time an agency administrator goes in and republishes a periodic assessment, all you're doing is republishing your entire decision. And so if you have any little administrative things that need fixed, fix them. If you need to increase the cost by $500,000, increase the cost,
And I know I've had these discussions with you. We use WFDS as a way to justify either going to a more complex organization or a less complex. So, if we're transitioning from a type 4 to a type 3, where we initiate the WFDS, and then we have a type 2 team come in, we can document it in WFDS, republish that decision with a different organizational structure.
Yep.
And then as we ramp down, so we go from, a incident management team 2 to a local IC type 4, we can update the WFDS, republish it. And now it's, for the appropriate level of supervision of that fire. And we use that in our documentation packet to justify why we did and when we did it, kind of thing.
Okay, so let's just go through the relative risk. I mean, I don't think we need to get more involved in just kind of looking at it and seeing, what the discussion would be. Relative risk is, it is based off of the PMS 236. So each of these factors that you're rating in relative risk comes directly out of the PMS 236 as well. Most of the factors will have some delineation of, is it bucket 1, bucket 2, bucket 3 type thing. So it could either be early, middle, late if you're talking about time of season. It could be few, moderate, or many if you're talking about barriers. It could be talking about seasonal severity. Before I get too far into it, though, I do want to highlight again, one of the tools that I'm leaving for you guys is the WFDS guide. So if you click on this link right here in your link tree and go to the WFDS guide, it'll bring it up. And before we get too far into it, I just want to make sure folks know what this is all about, because this is like my career in WFDS right here, all in one PDF document. So I've got, again, the checklist. The checklist, all of these items are like auxiliary things that maybe not the first decision, but by decision 2, decision 3, these are things that you should probably be incorporating into your decision. So I put that front and center in the guide. The rest of the guide, though, I have it broken out similar to WFDS, where you can click on each of these links and it'll take you, for example, we just did incident info. So same thing I talked about, go through the maps, look at all these layers. That's why I'm telling people to go. Very first thing you should do if you're doing a WFDS decision, look at that map just like you did. I have fire modeling information in the guide as well, similar to what we talked about. But then as you get into the guide, the relative risk, you can actually cut and paste this. This is set up for when you're doing your WFDS decision, when you get to the relative risk section. If you didn't know what to put in there, if you've never done a WFDS decision, you can copy this out of the guide, paste it into your decision, and then just start typing, what's relevant to your fire, and use that guide, and copy and paste. So again, I'm going to go back, take a look at this. You can look at the graph, the graphs are out of old WFDS. They're no longer in WFDS. A lot of these indicators, these were part of the old WFDS guide that weren't included in the new WFDS guide. So these are some things, is it truly low? Is this what we're seeing? Is it moderate? Is this what we're seeing? Is it high? So this guide can be used to really kind of help you work through your WFDS decision too, if you need to. It's just kind of got some common definitions. You can also do that by clicking any of these question marks. Whenever you see a question mark, it should bring up at least a definition. So here's telling you the time of season, evaluate the potential for a long duration fire, that's all it's asking for there. But you can click on those. So for us, time of season, again, this Hobart fire, I think the simulation, we're in July, so in the middle of the fire season. Barriers to fire spread, we can look at that potential control location metric if we wanted to. But based off of, what we had in the Hobart decision and what we had in the last decision, we said that they were moderate. Few, if any, ridges, rocky slopes, wide drainages, roads, and other fuel breaks are present. Seasonal severity, we decided to rate this one as high previously. Extreme fire behavior potential, fire consumed over 1,000 acres in the first 3 burning periods. So, that may be a relatively normal fire for Nevada, but anywhere outside of Nevada, that's a very active fire, right? So make sure we include that. All the hazards, fuel conditions, these are things that we can go back to our fuel monitoring standards, right? So if you're doing live fuel sampling, this is where we can put graphs in. You can actually put percentages, what are live fuel sample sites at. That's important to have in here. For fire behavior, again, just a brief description maybe of what the fire is doing. And in the decision, as you guys are editing it, one of the limitations of my guide is it also brings over a whole bunch of weird page breaks and breaks in the text. So if you see any weird edits, like, that you just need to delete some breaks out of, that's all you need to do. Within the fire behavior section, though, this is where we can put our fire behavior modeling, because we can show, what is the potential growth for that fire. This is a different type of modeling here. This is, again, what we can do out of WFDSS. So this is, and I know this is like lines on a map right here. And I wish if I had more time, I'd log into WFDSS and actually show you guys, because when you log into the map and you zoom in and you look at an imagery layer, and you overlay the path with that imagery layer, it tells a lot better story, right? And it tells you where some of your potential pinch points might be. It tells you if you have access to retardant, where you may want to use that retardant to pre-treat some of these areas. But it gives you a good look of, according to the model. And again, the model is based off of certain assumptions. The model is based off of a static wind, so wind does not change. And the model is also based off of no suppression action being taken. So that's the one thing you always got to get through all of our operations people's heads, right? They look at the model and they say, oh, we're going to put that out. Well, the model, every model we do assumes no suppression operations are taking place on it. That's the only way you can model fire behavior. You can't model fire behavior if you have firefighters out there on the ground putting it out. So all of our models assume no suppression action is being taken. So when we add suppression action into the equation, obviously that limits the potential growth of that fire too.
We've had to, a couple times fires, you look at these fire behavior and runs, and some of the agency administrators in the past, like, no, this is like the worst case if we don't do anything. So I think that's a great point great thing to point out.
Yep. And again, like with this MTT run, in WFDSS, we could do near-term fire modeling, which would actually bring in dynamic winds, and the model would, apply those dynamic winds at each portion of the model. We don't have that in MTT. So it's just a static wind from a static direction at one point in time. But for that initial modeling, like if you have a fire that's, 500, 1,000 acres and most of the perimeter is active, it's going to give you a pretty accurate representation, as long as you don't completely if you put a 30-mile-an-hour wind behind it, sure. Yeah, your model is going to blow it out the window and you're never going to catch it. But if you calibrate your model and put a lower wind speed on it, just to assume that. So even though you may be getting a 20-mile-an-hour wind, put a 10-mile-an-hour wind on it just to calibrate it and see what it looks like, right? There's different ways you can calibrate those runs to account for our fine fuel and fire behavior and fine fuels. So continuing to work through relative risk, again, the suppression difficulty index here, there should be a graph that populates here. I'm not sure why the graph isn't populating. You can go into values. In this case, the fire is burning in PHMA. So of course, under our new Greater Sage-Grouse GIS, now PHMA is the highest priority for protection in the Greater Sage-Grouse world. SFA no longer exists. So that's going to be high priority there. Proximity and threat of fire to values. You know, you can look at any of these types of values. And again, there's editing that needs done. So any of the other folks that are in here, if you want to work at some of your editing skills, you can come into these windows and do a little bit of editing just like that. Just need to take off some page breaks and so forth. It drives me crazy though. I don't know why it drives me crazy. It's my OCD. Social economic concerns. Okay, out in Ruby Valley, probably not a lot of social economic concerns, but you know, that may change if you have threat to ranches, threats to power lines, threats to infrastructure. You know, if we close down a highway or an interstate, what's the socioeconomic impacts of that? Significant, right? That's why it takes act of the governor basically to close I-80 down if we have any fires along the I-80 corridor. So be mindful of that. Just because a fire is out in the middle of nowhere, Nevada, doesn't mean that you're not going to have those same social economic concerns, especially now with data centers, power lines, power grids, all of that.
Yeah, and our big one is the UP line by California. I think I've been told it's $1 billion an hour if they have to shut that down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive endeavor for a UP. So
right.
I'll take that over I-80 though.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So as you go through the relative risk rating, as you're rating each of those, WFDSS is tallying those ratings and putting those into the overall relative risk rating. Based off of the number of lows, moderates, or highs, WFDSS is going to assign a low, moderate, or high, and you as an editor have the ability to override whatever WFDSS decides and select a low, moderate, or high based off of local unit discretion. And I guess is probably the best way to say it, right? So as you go through there, as you get to the end of it, so now that I'm done editing, if whenever the blue save button is active, you have to push the blue save button to save it. Once you hit save, spinning wheel of death. Once it's ready to save, now you can come over and ready for publication. So there's a two-step process, right? You have to hit save to save your edits. And then once you're ready for publication, this is what now pushes your edits up to WFDSS and allows every other editor to see your edits. So if you were following along with me, you may not have seen those edits. Now you should be able to see the edits that I just made if you're in that decision as well, just to kind of understand the process.
Is that at the bottom of that tab? I think that's what's getting hung up last year.
More than likely probably was.
Okay.
Yeah, just remember, it's always a two-step process. You always have to hit save and you have to slide over the ready for publication button. And if there are sometimes some bugs where you think you hit save and you still can't hit save. If you're seeing like I am right now, so I have to uncheck ready for publication, hit OK. Okay, see right now, once the blue spinning wheel of death leaves. Okay, so see right now, it's not going to allow me to hit save. But if I go into this text window and I even just take out a period, right? Now I can hit save. So just any editing whatsoever should trigger WFDSS to rekey that save button if you're getting any kind of buggy behavior or whatever. And then once you see that save button go blue, just push the save button again. And you have to go through this process. It has to save it. And because of the images, I think it takes a little bit longer. And then you have to slide over ready for publication. I like to slide over ready for publication when I'm doing the section. If you got multiple people that are going to be going back into there, you may not slide that over. You may just keep that, not ready for publication until at the very end when you know that everybody's got their edits in there. There's a couple of different ways you can accomplish that.
And where is the slide for ready for publication?
Down here at the bottom.
Okay, that's
yeah, for this section. Yeah, each section, each tab will have their own. The only other thing, for the PMS 236, there's nothing to the right here. If there was anything to the right, you would see it here. So that means that we can go into strategy and we can start looking at strategy. Okay, so within that strategy section, again, you can see here, if we go down to the bottom, we can look at what's already been completed. If I click on one of those, I gotta uncheck ready for publication. And that's always, if you're trying to do something and it doesn't, so what I'm doing here is, what I'm trying to do is click on it, and then by clicking on it, it brings it into this window up here. So again, same text editing window, you can include any images you want, but this is just going to be, and this is kind of a broad-based statement, but this can be the standard BLM protection objective that goes into basically every WFDSS decision for any district that's got greater sage-grouse habitat. And this could be applied to any fire, more than likely. Firefighter and public safety has been, continues to be BLM's highest fire management priority. Protecting, conserving, and restoring sage-grouse rangelands and sage-grouse habitat are among the BLM's fire management's highest natural resource objectives. The BLM's goal is to limit acres burned and damaged within and adjacent to sage-grouse habitat. Okay, that is clean, that's simple, that's to the point. Keep the fire small. Here's why: sage-grouse habitat. That could be as is right there. So that is the standard protection objective. There, same thing. Okay, I need to go back. I need to hit save. I need to hit ready for publication. And now that does it, it takes me over to strategic course of action. And strategic course of action, I'm checking that one. I don't think I have anything in strategic course of action yet, but if I wanted to, I could add, let's call it, okay. Suppression strategies, again, we're going through transition right now. There's a National Fire Board memo out that, to my understanding, here in a few weeks, the new definitions are going to be included in this list with these definitions as well. So we're still going to have the monitor, the confine, the point and zone protection, and the full suppression strategies. But when they update it based off of the National Fire Board memo, we're going to have, what is it? What are we calling it? Full suppression direct and full suppression indirect, or something like that. There's some weird terminology, which I completely disagree with, because you can still have a full suppression strategy fire while utilizing indirect tactics. And nobody above us seems to understand that right now. So that's unfortunate. But the point is that here in a couple of weeks, you're going to be able to select those strategies as well. And my understanding is that for the Wildland Fire Service, we are not going to be able to select monitor, confine, point zone protection, maybe full suppression, but we're going to have to, our selections are going to be focused on those two new selections. We're going to have to apply those two new terminologies to every fire we manage this year. So right, wrong, or indifferent, it is what it is. In our case, it's always going to be full suppression, so again, we can utilize the planning area for our feature name here. And I would utilize the planning area. The only time I wouldn't use the planning area for a strategic course of action is if you had differing courses of action based off of where you're at in the fire, right? Knowing that we're going into the season with the full suppression strategy, we can't apply anything else. That's not going to be a concern. If we had those other options where we could apply those, then that's where you would have maybe a strategic course of action would be full suppression in this side of the fire or this polygon. But if the polygon on this, if it gets into this side of the fire, this is where we can exercise other than full suppression, right? But a strategic course of action applies to one polygon. That one polygon can cover your entire planning area, or it can cover just a portion of your planning area. But your strategic courses of action, when summarized in whole, should add up to your whole planning area. Does that make sense? Think of it as a piece of pizza, right? That's how I like to think of it. So within that strategic course of action, again, I'm going to go back to the guide. So here, strategy and cost. We have, and this is what I want to really highlight the guide, because when you get into your strategies, don't spend a bunch of time trying to think about incident objectives. This guide has basically any type of incident objective you're going to apply to a fire in Nevada. You can copy and paste it. It's got the leader's intent in it right there. You may need to change the species name. You know, you may not be protecting Lahontan cutthroat trout habitat. You may be protecting red-bound trout habitat. I don't know, whatever your trout is. But each of these objectives is basically set up to where they can be copied and pasted into your decision. Same thing, incident requirements. We can still use the incident objective, incident requirement concept. They just get plugged into your strategy section. So incident requirements are different than incident objective. Incident requirements are things you will do as a team. So if you're asking them to do certain things as a team, if you're asking them to follow this or do this or report this to the agency administrator, that goes into your incident requirements section. And I would continue to utilize those incident requirements section. Here is where we can get into more of a strategic course of action. So here, you know, is you can copy and paste this, come in. Again, with the PDFs make it a little bit more difficult to copy and paste, but. Okay, current fire situation, C risk assessment. Each of these fields is required. Desired outcome, fire out, public safe. Strategic comparison. What does strategic comparison mean to you? If we're being told by the secretary we can only exercise full suppression, is there any comparison we need to make? No, right? So full suppression is the only strategy. If we did have an option to utilize other than full suppression as a management strategy, this is a section where you would maybe do a risk benefit table, right? Or this is where you would compare and say, this is why we're doing this versus doing that. But if we only have full suppression, you really don't need to do a strategic comparison because there's nothing to compare.
So where would we know under full suppression? I mean, obviously in Nevada or everywhere we go, there's going to be places on a fire where it's just not safe to put people in, where we'll engage it later if it moves. Would we put it in strategic comparison or would we just put that in?
I would put it in your relative risk if there's areas of a fire that you know you're not going to be able to get boots on the ground.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because both of those two new strategies imply that there's going to be people on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. Strategy constraints, we'll say none. Cooperator stakeholders. You can include all of your cooperator stakeholders here. I say see decision rationale, because this is where in the decision rationale, all of our cooperators are listed there. So that's how I would build that. You can, again, any of those fields, you can add whatever you want, but that is a basic strategic course of action based off of a full suppression strategy that we can include in the WFDSS decision. So once you hit save, again, be patient with it. You can see here that now we're going to have a couple different strategic courses of action in the decision. And here we can even order those, right? Remember in old WFDSS how it took a while to, you really wanted to get your firefighter safety up there at #1 as your first objective. At old WFDSS, it took a while to be able to order those. But in here, you can just click and drag those in any order you want and then hit update table. And it'll update the table for everybody else. And then it publishes those decisions. It puts those strategic courses of action in that order as well. There's a few other editing things when the blue wheel is gone here that I want to show you guys under strategic assessment. Again, here we have hours. Make sure you check these. If you don't check include in decision, it doesn't include it in the PDF. So it just lives in WFDS, but it doesn't put it in the PDF. So make sure that you put include in decision. If you check off highlight in decision, it puts it up in front right behind the decision rationale. Otherwise, it keeps it in the table towards the middle of the section. But if you highlight it in the decision, it puts it up in the front towards the decision rationale. And then you can also, we're not gonna do it right now because we've already got labeled as a production objective, but if it's a critical value at risk, you can also identify that. And then it goes into the critical value at risk table, and it's part of the decision as well. So there's a couple different ways that you can include your strategic course of action there. Again, this is the one that always gets me because, you would think that we're done, right? When you just look at these two tabs, okay, we've done strategic assessment, we've done strategic course of action, but what's different here? We've got this button that you push and there's a whole nother field over here, right? So this is where we go into cost. And again, we're a little different now. We don't have to do the cost notification procedures like we used to, but within cost, we can estimate the cost and we can actually download some cost estimators as well. So these are the same cost estimators that they use to update the EI suite rates. So if you really want to geek out and get technical, you can download the spreadsheets and see what a daily rate cost is for a type 1 crew and then multiply how many type 1 crews you have versus how many days they have and figure out that they're costing you, whatever it is per day. Or you can just do an estimate. I think the historic estimates within WFDS are probably about as good of an estimate as you can do. We no longer have the stratified cost index. We used to have SCI in old WFDS that basically would kind of tell you based off of your fire size, this should be your cost. And it was based off of a whole bunch of different things that I'm not aware of. So I would just stick with the estimated final cost. Again, if we go back to the guide, go into cost, there's a couple different rationales. You can copy and paste those. For a WAG, this is something that I tend to do. If it's a type 3 fire anymore, it's going to be $1.5 million more than likely. I mean, if you're going to have 2 days of air resources and spend more than 5 days on a fire with ground resources, you're looking at over $1 million fire. So I wouldn't, don't restrict yourself. Go ahead and just wag it out at a $1.5 million fire. Give yourself a little buffer. For a Nevada type 3 incident, and this is a normal Nevada type 3 incident, 1,000 acres, teams on it for 5 to 10 days. Probably closer to $3 million just because there's some additional logistics costs. And then anytime you bring in a CIMT, this is what I did under the old cost thresholds, just because I always told everybody, if you're going to bring in a CIMT, just get the cost threshold notification done. Say you're going to spend $10 million, give them a $10 million limit on the WFDS. That gives them $10 million to get out the door, get their feet under them. And typically you're looking at a burn rate at about $1 million a day from a complex team once they get their feet under them. So you can, that it's going to cost them about $7 million if they're going to be out there for 7 days, just based off that rate. So
when Savoy was in the state office, she broke down like cost per acre for site costs.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to estimate a type 3 team was about $300,000 a day in end. We bumped that up to $500,000 working with Danny last year. And then the IMTs were just to get an IMT on the districts $1 million.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, exactly. This section is now out of date in the guide. Again, you don't have to do cost notifications. This was just the email template that we had in place for when we did have to do the email notifications. So if somebody wanted to use that template, they could, but by no means do we need to. Okay. So again, every section, we want to check, make sure it's ready for publication. We haven't done anything different. So now we can go in, we can look at our firefighter safety section, right? I like using the terminology that comes with these graphs. I just copy that, paste it right here, because then it just republishes it in the decision as well. And these graphs, the utility, I'm not quite sold on, does a pie graph showing me that I have high difficulty, suppression difficulty index over an area tell me anything? That probably doesn't tell you that much, right? But if you look at it on a map, that tells you a lot more if you look on it spatially on a map, and you can see that in this area, it's blue, it's probably safe to work in. In this area, it's red, it's not safe to work in. What resources do we need to be successful? You know, that's really what that suppression difficulty index is. So again, it'll populate these graphs. If you wanted to download the JPEG image, you can download the JPEG image from here, but it will put these in your decision and basically the easiest thing to do is just like this. So I clipped out portion of the legends. Okay. Move that down to 25%. Hit save. We've got our firefighter safety. I'll go back. Sorry, I'm getting a little trigger happy. Within firefighter safety, you can see there is a weather and smoke section, but you can see on the EDU side, weather smoke works. So that's just set up for the developers. I'm thinking that in the future, we'll be able to it may read the weather, but this will be where you would paste, the daily fire weather matrix in, for example, for your decision. And then that way that becomes part of your decision. Old WFDSS automatically brought in the zone fire weather forecast, made that part of the decision. Excuse me. I always hated that because a lot of times if you publish the decision and then 3 days later, the team was reading the decision, the fire weather forecast they were reading was already 5 days old at the time, right? So I don't recommend necessarily copying and pasting over a zone fire weather forecast and putting in your WFDSS decision. But the National Weather Service is doing a lot of daily matrices now that really help tell a story. And those would be very valuable in a WFDSS decision. All right, so we are now in organization and complexity. The organization and complexity, again, models the PMS 236. If I flip back to the guide, you can see here that, again, you can utilize the guide if you need to bring some text into it. But for each of these elements, we've already completed that. So we're going to go through the same thing. Relative risk is not part of it. Implementation difficulty is part of it. So if I unslide the ready for publication button over. Potential fire duration, again, most of ours, they're going to rate out as moderate, for our PJ fires, they're a true moderate. If you get into some high elevation fires, you guys would have definitely some long-term fires here in Ely. That could be a consideration as well, but usually most of unless you have PJ or some form of timber, they're going to be low. But if you have PJ or any form of timber on your fire, moderate or high is probably a good potential fire duration to look at. Incident strategies, again, if we had multiple strategies that could potentially conflict, that would create a complexity. But in the event that we're going forward with full suppression only, not a lot of concern there. Functional concerns is what is it going to take to support your incident? Don't get too hung up in the nitty-gritty on functional concerns, because with the new organizational needs assessment, we can actually get into each of the sections and highlight them if it ranks out high enough. Socio-political concerns, external influences, ownership concerns. Again, ownership concerns are anytime you have more than one jurisdiction involved. So most of our fires, you're going to have at least private public land involved. In some cases, you may have NDF. In some cases, you may have county. In some cases, you may have local jurisdictions. So keep that in mind. That's how that increases the complexity as well. Recommended organization, again, here. And I'm going to go ahead and override this because we said it was a type 4 fire, which we know it's a type 4 fire. I think you guys managed it as a type 4 fire, right, John?
Seth managed it with a trainee.
With a trainee, okay. You have the ability to where even if, again, as an editor, as a decision approver, you don't have to go with what WFDSS says. I mean, if you go through this and say that we rank out every single one of these as 7, but we still are, every single one of these is moderate, but we still know that we want to order an IMT, CIMT for it, then we can simply check off that CIMT, hit save. And then what that does is that should open up part D of the PMS 236. And now this is where, if you're saying that your complexity is at a complex incident management team or higher, this is where you rationalize why you need each of those sections. So again, under the command section, why is it complex? Under the planning section, what are they doing in plans? Are they doing anything different? Are they putting together long-term plans? Is there, any other concerns on the operations side? What are some of the concerns? Why do you need a complex incident management team? And then this is basically the script that should be used between Wildland Fire Service, Bureau Representative, and IC when they make those phone calls and start negotiating rosters and pre-orders and everything else. So that starts here. That starts here in your WFDSS decision. And you can, again, if you go back into the guide, I copied and pasted these elements from a fire that I was on as a complex IC trainee on the Boise National Forest, because I thought that they did a good job putting in their rationalization in here. But again, whatever types of justification, rationalization you need to support ordering the team, this is where it goes. So again, the command, some of the considerations, the planning considerations, operational considerations, finance considerations, logistics considerations, all of those can be put into your decision. And I'm not going to do it here because I'm going to go back into part C and E, and I'm going to push the easy button. And I'm going to say that we're not ordering the team. We're just sticking with a type 3 team and hitting save. But if you were going to order a complex incident management team for the fire, that is the section you would use to populate and justify why you need to order the team. And my hope is, so for example, NMAC has a process when we get into PL5 where you have to justify ordering a team. NMAC used to have to make, and I bet they still make people fill out the form that asks for all that information. Instead of just going into all they'd have to do is log into the WFDSS decision, they can read it, right? But they make everybody recreate the form because they don't know how to get into WFDSS and read the form. So, yes, they still do.
If we had a fire rank out, where it was asking, saying we needed a complex incident management team, but we get into the situation where they're not available, is this where we would justify, it should have a type 2 or whatnot?
Yep.
The only thing available is a type 3?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of considerations, right? I mean, in that case, you may know that you have a type 3 managing the fire. Maybe it's going to take you 5 days to get a complex team, right? So you bring in a type 3 team knowing that they're just going to set up the basics, and manage that fire until a complex incident management team can get released and reassigned. And then they can be absorbed as a branch or something like that. But, yeah, that's where you could rationalize all of that and put it into your decision. Document it. Right. Okay, so again, we're going to slide over. Oh, and the error message that you saw there. Make sure I hit save. Make sure I hit ready for book.
Did Gator get his new 209 form done? Do you know?
Say that again.
Did Gator get that new 209 form done too? That's kind of mimics a lot of this.
Oh, well, no, the 209 form isn't changing. The IPW, right? Right, yeah, that's a website that's gonna pull in all the 209 information and create another report that they can use to prioritize.
Get that one done?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's gonna be good.
Oh, it's Kinder.
Yeah. That's some good stuff for sure.
Above my head.
Yeah. Let's see, so it's asking, there's something in here. I'm just gonna skip over that section because I want to get to the decision rationale. The decision rationale is the final section, right? And here is where we're now different, right? Before, this used to be the agency administrators. They would come in, they would type in their decision rationale, and then we would approve it. New WFDSS is set up a little bit different. New WFDSS is set up where only the approver can go in and edit these fields now. So an editor cannot go into the rationale and type in your decision rationale as an approver. Only you as the approver can go in and type in your rationale. You can make an editor an approver to do that, but that requires going into your profile, switching back and forth and doing that. So keep that in mind. Only the approvers have the ability to edit this text that's in the decision rationale. And again, I'll leave it up on the screen. You guys can read it. What goes into the decision rationale is up to the Wildland Fire Service and the Bureau reps, right? In our case, we've always highlighted the fact that if a fire is full suppression, we say that it's full suppression in the decision rationale. How we're going to manage the fire is important in the decision rationale, whether you're going to use a type 3 IC, whether you're going to order in a team, whether that team is a Nevada type 3 team, or whether that team is a complex incident management team. All of that information can go into the decision rationale. Some of the other things that should go into the decision rationale we've been talking about, the documentation with other agencies. So if you have agencies that are involved, maybe they just had a small involvement in the beginning because they had a small threat that was quickly taken care of. Whatever their level of engagement is, they should be included in this decision rationale as well. And then one of the things that I'm putting in, that I'm highlighting here, is we do have many cooperators that do not participate in WFDSS, right? So there's still a way that you can get them. If they had to be a decision approver for whatever reason, or you wanted to show that they were part of that approval process, even if it was just, not so much a formal process, just they're sitting at the table with us and we're listening to their input, they could potentially either send an email that you could attach to the decision, saying that I'm in full support of this decision as of this date, attach that into your decision as documentation, or you could have them even do a PDF signature on a decision rationale, such as did here, and then upload that into the decision as well. So just because they're not in WFDSS, there's other things that we can do to document their involvement. And if it's part of this decision rationale, just a simple PDF, a simple email, whatever that happens to look like, but showing that decision, that documentation process in your decision is important. Does that make sense? Okay, so you plug all that information into your decision rationale. Down here, we have some decision update triggers. A new decision is going to be acquired when a periodic assessment indicates no longer valid. If the fire moves beyond our planning area boundary, if any of those items there is met, that's what would cause us to publish a new decision. So keep that in mind as well. So we're getting very close to the end, right? Supporting information, published decisions. You can see that this is going to be our 4th published decision. So again, new WFDSS is a little different than old WFDSS. We just continue to build upon decisions, and every periodic assessment that's completed is just building a new decision. So don't be afraid of having to edit your decision. The nice thing, though, is now that we have these boxes working, right, we can see that within our decision, we still have a couple things that are hanging out there. One is the strategic assessment. The other is the strategic course of action, and the third is the organization and complexity. So we've got some time. We're a little ahead of schedule. What I'd like you guys to do is, at your computers, go ahead and make sure that you can log in the decision, and let's take care of all 3 of those boxes. So if I could have either one person or one group of people working on that strategic assessment, one group of people working on the strategic course of action, and one group of people working on the organization complexity. If anybody, Ty, if you guys want to go into that decision rationale and edit that decision rationale, play around with that, now would be a good time to do that as well too. Okay, but I'm just going to give you guys a few minutes just to kind of get into the system itself, edit those fields. But at the end of it, by 11:30, let's try to have all of these boxes complete. So this is kind of a test for you guys. I know what's wrong with these 3 sections that need to be checked off, but I want you guys to go in there and see if you can figure out what you need to do, knowing that we got a time crunch. And at 11:30, in 40 minutes, you have all of your agency administrators showing up wanting to approve this decision. And realistically, this is how it's like, right? So.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So in the past, when the decision would be ready for the agency administrator to approve, they would get an email.
Mhm.
Is there still going to be that functionality in WFDS, or do we have to say, hey, you need to, darn it?
Yep.
Okay.
No reminders of periodic
Oh,
assessments.
really?
Yep.
That's my next question.
Nope.
Okay.
No notifications coming out of WFDS at all right now. Yep. So we keep bringing it up and hopefully, I know there is work towards some form of notification. At least a planning area notification would be nice, right? So.
Yeah, yeah. I know, like our agency administrators in the past, they're dealing with the fire, but they still have their day job
jobs.
too. So I mean, it just compounds on their time. So that reminder is pretty nice.
Yes, yes, it is. Okay, so are you guys clear on what we need to be doing over the next half hour or so? Okay. Jake, I think you're still our point of contact, right?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, so it's, all eyes are on you. You are the responsible party. And I'll leave this, if anybody wants to come up here and drive this, you're more than welcome to drive this if you want to drive this.
So, say that, I didn't really think complete. We have to work through each one. You just open up each one.
Whatever you
Like, make like a little, just, baseball on something.
Really, that's how we're gonna do it. Are you?
Are you on touch screen?
Are you doing what?
Yeah, it's just like
Actually.
do at the end,
That's
just put in like a space or something.
main thing here. John, where you working on?
There we go. Yeah, just do something, it'll let you
Oh,
highlight.
that's good.
Save. Good. Which portion? Organizational needs.
Organizational needs.
I don't think so many stupid questions.
No, I love the questions.
Maybe only each one.
One and just, save them and make sure.
Create this section, here, this is this section strategy plan. Later.
Much, man.
Oh,
Margaritas?
sure.
Perfect.
So, it's lucky we've not had anything fired.
We'll run it through you.
Yeah, I'm like you, Chair, I'm like, let's run through the air.
Okay,
So
so.
which one, you guys like work on?
Strategic assessment is the only thing that's done right now, so if you just click on that, it'll take you right to it. Close. On any risks? Okay. So the strategic assessment, the name of the strategic assessment, she was just saying, full suppression. And each section we got with the way, say, the way it operates now, and then I skip over the narrative real quick. And then go to this, scroll up, and jam past it real quick, so we scroll up. One more planning area, so you got that set. The feature, there's the planning area, so that's
Oh, well, I pulled in the strategic assessment narrative for the, state route. Or the
That's
state
what
ones.
So make sure you're.
Yeah.
Some reason mine wasn't loading in there. Fire baby.
Mine don't.
Somebody else here, so.
I just stopped playing with.
Which one are you guys in?
Strategic assessment, that's the last one.
I'll roll the risk.
Regional air planning area, so it's already populated there.
That's already-
And so those are actually all.
It should be able to-
It's probably just.
Then we'll go back, jam back up to the narrative.
Yeah.
Fire and public safety.
Ready, coach. Okay. Now we go back to your suitable assessment.
Organization.
It,
But like,
yeah, trying to come up to speed after a year of not touching Now, you're even not having any big fires. Your strategic assessment is safe now.
Yeah, so when you decision approval, yeah. And you scroll back down through it as soon as it loads. All of the risk is looking out, the strategic assessment. Yeah, so relative risk, you can put that one, see where we're at, the probability,
Should be.
moderate, moderate, moderate.
And it's not very.
So we're just make sure we got everything checked. There's not here.
I think it's, just once you go in there, you like, hit save and it should change it.
Take a little. There you. Yeah.
Relative risk.
Are you guys in relative risk?
I'm saving it right now.
Well, Dylan, you wanna know all about that fire?
Yeah. I do. I do.
You ran that as a type 4 to get trained, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Granite's type 4,
Save.
1,100 acres,
That was there.
and we had, Blue Jay Ranch. that added it.
Doing the line,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
Probably-
working on this, so.
About a 3/4 of a mile is crow flies,
Yeah, that's way too many.
but there's a bunch of features in between,
Right.
so.
Right. Yep. Yeah, that's a weird place, huh? That Blue Jay Ranch out there. It just
Yeah,
sits out there in the middle of it. You wouldn't even expect it to be there.
yeah,
There's water, there's a pond.
Yeah. Yep.
I've got a few,
yeah, we're dipping into that pond too.
Right. Right.
like right next to somebody's house.
Mm.
Yeah, like directly next to it. Big concerns on that fire were, smoke impacting the mine,
Mhm.
everything. It started in some kind of fuel treatment. No one knows what fuel treatment it was.
Really?
Yeah.
Wasn't
It was that long.
old chaining or what was
It
it?
was an old lot and scatter and then it burned into like a masticate, when it got into the mastication, it fell on its face.
Yeah.
Didn't run into. This lot and scatter, burned through that and then got in the mountains,
Mhm.
caught it on the top. But, ridgeline,
Good fire, huh?
yeah. I had a type 4 training with me and I'm like, well, I'm getting you till this date and then type 3
Mhm.
ramp and everything up. So,
Yeah.
what we got going?
Perfect, perfect.
We actually had a medical on that damn thing too.
Did you? Something serious?
Yeah, guy sprained his ankle. When he sprained it, hit his head on a rock.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We had to fly him out.
right.
Like,
Not too often you have a code red sprained ankle. Did he lose consciousness when he hit his head?
he doesn't remember if he lost consciousness. No,
Right.
but like, it was yellow at first and then popped it up and put on air.
Right.
Are you in it? That's why it's not getting done.
Okay, now.
Yeah,
But it never hit the
Yeah.
chaining that they did.
Yeah,
Some strong arm here, Kelly.
It was completely wind driven, tipped on about a fire.
right.
Like, I think we had probably sustained 20-mile-an-hour winds out there when
Yeah.
we first got there.
Right.
It not only grew acreage, like the first day it didn't grow any acreage, like it, and then the second day, we gained like 10 acres.
Mhm.
You say that?
We had this, like, up in the rocks, when it
Someone's touching something.
just would not stop.
Right. Nothing to hold it. Well, it's been a good training incident for 2 years now, so.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, infrastructure out there, like obviously you got safe grouse habitat and all that crap, but, like a lot of power lines
Mhm.
moving through there.
And then cultural, right? I mean,
Yeah.
anywhere there's water, there's cultural resources out in that valley, so.
Luckily for us, where that fire was, like, I don't think we would have made it. We had big enough roads to
Mhm.
be able to hold it on, do it for an operation or something.
Right,
Cause there's a main road that runs from the Bald Mountain Mine, comes across the Blue Jay. Well, it's like the path in Blue Jay, it's kind of a power line road.
yeah, right.
Like, it's nice and super wide.
Mhm.
But luckily that year, the vegetation, grass crop wasn't that big. So
Yeah,
when it hit into stuff, it, when it got out of sage and everything, it just
it
died.
just died.
You want to see it?
Still got pictures on your phone of it too, huh?
Biggest thing we had to worry about up there was cattle.
Mhm.
It was on. That guy's a lot.
Yeah, we've got.
It's just one field, yeah,
Everybody clicked on it at the same time.
yeah. You guys.
Look at this, is it come some on top of a.
Yeah, looks like it out there.
Isn't that?
People ready for approval? Not touching it, that's what I'm just saying, that's why I asked the question. I know.
The draft PDF document is available.
Yeah, so there's cattle right up in here.
Mhm. Probably getting a half-hour turns out of those guys, right? They're coming out of wells.
It was less,
Yeah.
yeah.
Where are you gonna sit in the new organization?
I don't know yet.
Mhm.
Well, there's 4 of us in one fire planner box. So we're still trying to figure out how that's supposed to work.
Work with everybody
Yeah, I know.
and everybody.
That's what it is.
That burned through the night too.
Yeah,
All night. I mean, was it burning after?
so about 11
Yeah,
and it just died down.
right. And everything's so dry out there too from the rain shadow, right? I mean, people don't realize how dry that valley is because of the rains.
You're done.
We are done. Outstanding.
Found with so many people, you have to refresh pretty much every time you do anything.
Yeah,
Online. We got her.
yeah.
And I did already do, yeah, sorry, I got ahead.
Oh, you're good. You're good. All right. Well, if that's the case, yeah, we can go through this now. Okay, so we are at the decision approval. Again, once all of these elements are met, we can go in, we can create the draft decision. So that's one of the things you'll see the wheel there, or the monitor, the whatever the term is for the bar, the status bar. That's creating the PDF. Once that is created, it applies that to your decision. And then I'm listed as an approver right now, so I'm going to go through and approve it just so I can show you the process. And if there was multiple approvers, I'll show you what the process is between the multiple approvers too. So as an approver, I've come in, I've already typed in my decision rationale, I've gone through the whole decision. Here, as an approver, I can set the number of days required between assessments. It doesn't do anything in the system other than putting that date into that table that I was showing you guys at the very beginning of the training from the My Incidents home. So don't think that this is going to send you a notification or somebody's going to get a notification. It's not. And because of that, I'm just going to go ahead and set that to 3 right now, because I'm trying to get people used to the concept of don't set that for more than 3 days at a time at this point. There are a couple cool options though in here now. One is, as an agency administrator, if this was, say this was a 500-acre fire or 500,000-acre fire that's had a team on it for 3 months and you've been doing the same decision and nothing's changing, you're just waiting for the team to call it out and move on. You could set this to either 14 days, or you could say that the strategy has been met and assessments are no longer needed. What that means is that an approver is that just what it says, your strategy's been met and your daily assessments are no longer needed because nothing's changing with the management of the fire. So if you wanted to, you could set that in there like that, you could. Once you have reviewed everything, again, I'm going to hit save. Once I have hit saved, that's going to pop up these buttons right here. And here I can click on the approved decision. It's going to come up with this screen. By signing the decision, you are approving the strategic plan for the incident. So if I wanted to approve the decision right now, I could, but say I just wanted to grab the PDF, right? I can preview the decision, give it a little while to spit it out. Once it spits it out, you're going to save it. And then from here, what happened here? That's what it's trying to do. Okay. All right. So again, I did not approve the decision, right? I told WFDSS that I wanted to preview the draft decision, and that's the reason why it's got draft all over the boundaries of it. The reason I'm teaching this is because if we had White Pine County, if we had Lincoln County, If we had, any of these local counties that may not be in WFDSS, but still need to have some sort of approval process, you could print them out this PDF draft, they could look at the decision rationale and they could put a little PDF signature on this decision rationale, and then you could upload that back in the decision, right? And that would document your process of working with a local fire or local cooperator that is not in WFDSS. So
under the WFPP, so like Lincoln County, would NDF be signatory with this?
yes, well, they say, yes, under the agreement I understood, they should be citing the WFDSS decision form, but in our case, well, and when I say my experience with Elko County, they still have Elko County sign all of those decisions.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay. That's something we'll need clarification on, obviously.
Yep. I just want to have them ask, because just like I said, up in Elko County, they have the county approve those decisions. Yeah. So this is what the draft PDF looks like. Again, before I approve it, I can go through here, it puts all of my decision rationale. First and foremost, if I put a map in that decision rationale, I put that map right in the beginning. The strategic summary that we talked about, any of these fields that you see in here, at some point in the decision, we can go back and edit those if we need to. But again, the strategic course of action that we talked about, everything that we talked into there. You go through, you can see the symbology and your relative risk. Anything that's rated as moderate is orange. Anything that's rated as high is red. You can see what the images look like that we, as we put those images into the decision rationale there. So, we do only put maps in here, but that's anything, right? That could be fuels conditions, that could be a weather outlook, that could be whatever documentation you want to put into that decision. And then you can spread those out in different sections of the decision as well. Again, going into strategic assessment, we've talked about, the full suppression strategy. The cost, all of those are included in here. We get into the organizational needs assessment as well. Again, it's color coded, good symbology. All of this language here is the unit fire planning information that is pulled in from Spatial Fire Planning Service. So again, we can see here that, in our case, we've got the GHMA, we got PHMA. You always know that these are updated based off of the terms. This is GHMA 2025, PHMA 2025. So this is loading in the most recent multi-unit language that I put in there for our sage-grouse habitat. So that's why you're getting the 2025 language in there. Then it's pulling in all of the cooperators. So whether it's ELE, these are your district-wide part of your unit boundary. So anything that's district-wide is part of your unit boundary. Then you have your management requirements in here too. Showed HTF, so it shows ENA, RLR. We should be seeing some more HTF as well. It did show the one HTF on there, but yeah. So Ruby, so this is H2, right? So Forest Service has a little different naming convention with their management areas, so.
And we're still fixing those.
Yeah,
from
okay.
the old land management plan and making it so that the titles are more, because it used to be like just a bunch of random numbers and
Right.
letters, and we're trying to fix those to make it so that
Okay.
it makes sense to the new WFDSS stuff.
Yep. So you'll see that like Ruby Mountain Wilderness, H4, there's some differences between H2 and H4. So you would want to go through there and just make sure you have a good understanding of what your cooperators. Elko, for example, they have a lot of subunit overlapping shapes. So you're pulling in any of those Elko subunit overlapping shapes that are part of your planning area as well. HTF has their own sage-grouse guidance as well. So you're going to be pulling in that HTF sage-grouse guidance. And then any of the other guidance that's in there is either sub or other unit shapes or subunit non-overlapping shapes are all going to be pulled into this section here. So you can see there's a lot of spatial fire planning direction that gets pulled in based off of that clip that we did. So that is your draft decision. So as an agency administrator, if I'm good with that, I can go ahead and say approve decisions. And then I'm going to say, by signing the decision, you're approving the strategic plan. I sign the decision. And we should be good to go. Approved. Oh, we have a whole bunch of approvers.
Yeah, I added everybody.
Okay, that's what, I was wondering, why is my publish button not coming up? Okay, so now I need Ashley, I need Cameron, I need Kelly, and I need Robert to all go in there and do that exact same thing. So I can show you how to publish. And it's really simple. You can't publish the decision until all of the approvers have approved the decision. So when you have multiple approvers, the only thing that publishing a decision in WFDS means that any viewer can view it. So right now, we're approved, only the people listed on the collaborator list can view it. As soon as we publish it, then anybody that's got viewer access to WFDS can publish it. So you want to make sure that you have all those approvers going in there. So I'll just sit here and be patient until everybody can log in and get their approvals done. And then we'll be able to publish. Again, I would just tab over. I think if I tab over and then tab back, that'll refresh.
Bam. Mine says published.
Yours says published. Okay, so if his says published again, I can just probably tab over to decision rationale and tab back over. And that should refresh everything without getting you completely out. And you can see now that everybody's approved, right? Now I can publish the decision. Now this button down here is grayed out. So make sure that if you have multiple approvers, everybody goes through and whoever the last approver is to approve it, publishes a decision. Because if you don't publish the decision, then it's in WFDS, all the collaborators can view it, but nobody outside of that collaborator list can see the decision at all. And we've worked through the process, guys. We worked through the process of creating, we didn't create the decision because the decision was already created, but we worked through the entire approval process and now we have an approved WFDS decision ready for our agency administrators and anybody else for lunch. So are there questions? I know I went through that pretty fast, so now is your time to answer any questions that you may have.
Is there still a function where you can download a PDF of the current decision? Remember how we used to be able to do that?
Right, you can do that. So right now that everything is published, I should have stayed in that screen.
Shows up.
Oh, yeah.
So now that it's published, we go into here and we just pull out this top one. If you wanted to get that PDF before you publish a decision, that's where as an approver, you hit the approve button. And then when the next window pops up, you don't approve the decision, but you download the draft PDF. So that's how you download that draft PDF before publishing. Yeah, but once it's published, you can just go into those published decisions and download the PDF that way.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
I know some people still like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I still like it too. Yeah. And then again, if you have cooperators that are not in WFDS, I mean, that way, I mean, if they don't even have to be in the room, right? You can just send them an email saying, hey, I'm going to email you this thing. This is what it says. Just send me an email back saying that you reviewed it and you concurred with it. And that's enough for me to put in my decision that, you know, we work with our local cooperators or whatever. So there's a couple different ways we can accomplish that. I do want to, I skipped over something pretty quick when I was showing you guys the drawing tool. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to bring that pod layer back in too, because within WFDS, there is actually a way that you can copy over features, which is really nice, especially if you're copying over like these pod boundaries. And, oh, we don't want space file, sorry, we want operational. Okay. So let's say we're on day one of the fire, right? And I know that I want to click on it. So when I click on the map, the first thing you have to realize is it's going to grab that uppermost layer. But if you use the next or the back buttons down here, you can scroll through those layers until you find the one that you want. And in this case, yeah, that was the pod boundary. So that's what we wanted. So let me click on that again. Get back over to the pod boundary. And then here, once I'm all set up with the pod boundaries, you got to kind of pay attention to this. I'm going to go into feature layer, say I want a new planning area. And then I'm going to go over to copy feature, right? Because I've already got the pod boundary. So I just say, boom, copy feature. And then I go to save. Are you sure? I say yes. And that's how you can copy your pod boundary into your planning area without having to actually draw the boundary, right? So if you do that though, be cautioned, right? Because these pod boundaries are clipped exactly to the road. So if you're going to want to use that road as a control feature, you're going to want to buffer that. So you may want to copy it over just like that. And then you can come over here and then just start drawing and just make yourself a buffer just based off of how you draw, whatever. But just realize that if you take those pod boundaries and don't buffer them at all, you're not going to give yourself anywhere outside that road area. And you want to buffer that road area a little bit more if you're going to use it as a control feature.
So in the old generation of WFDS, if anything went outside your planning unit, you had to make your unit bigger. Is that the same for next gen?
Yep, that's going to trigger a new decision. Yep. Which would just mean you just have to come in here, redraw the planning area boundary, hit save, and everything else is already in there, right? Yep. That's the other nice thing about WFDS. You don't have to redo any of this stuff. Once you get it done the first time, it's in there. So unless you delete it out, you don't have to change it. I mean, unless it's something you need to change.
But if you do change your planning area, then you would need to do a new
Spatial inventory.
spatial
Yes.
inventory and then,
Yep. If you do, yep, exactly. That's a great point. If you do that planning area boundary, you're going to want to go back in. Sorry. Get off here. You're going to want to go back into incident info, go into that spatial inventory tab. And you're going to tell it every time. You're going to have to go through this because it doesn't know what current is, but for some reason that's not working again. If it was working, I should be able to click right in there. And it should say current and then generate the spatial inventory, but there's something buggy going on right now. So I've learned better to not force my way through it and just say it's a bug. Forcing my way through it never works. Certain things just don't take. So I may have to, oh, there it goes. It's probably going to recalculate something from there. Other questions?
sometimes you want to like maybe move your planning area to get stuff out of your spatial inventory. For like there, you've got the refuge or something that might have all kinds of things that are going to show up in your decision, like, oh, we need to look for this and this and this and this, and you're like, yeah, the fire's not actually going to hit the refuge. So
Yep.
I'm gonna pull that out of my 3 mile box or my pod layer.
There it goes. So it just took a little time there. Yeah, and then you just hit generate SI and it regenerates. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and you can draw those planning areas. Like I said, we have those pod boundaries set up to be a pre-planned planning area boundary, but you can hand draw that to be whatever you want. And then you can hand draw anything in there too. I mean, I just did the planning area boundary, but you can see here that perimeters, right? So nice thing about WFDS now, it all reads off of National Incident Feature Service. So as long as your folks out in the field are using feature service and collecting their data, it'll update in WFDS as soon as it, syncs to the system. But if you need to draw a perimeter in here, it's just as simple as using that drawing tool, and whether it's an air attack photo or whether it's a virus heat signature or whatever it is you're using, you can draw a perimeter just using that polygon tool too. All right, well, if there's no other questions, let's go ahead and break for lunch. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, so we'll give an hour and a half for lunch. You guys do whatever you need to, and come back at 1 o'clock and we'll do the afternoon session. Okay? Yeah.
If let's say I get like a fire, it's type 4, it hasn't quite hit the point where I would actually need to do WFDS. So let's say I just go in there and I grab it.
Mhm.
And then they put it out, right, or do whatever, and then I never actually do a decision on that. Is it gonna be like a hanging chat in the system that everybody's gonna be?
No, it would show in WFDS that you initiated it and then never published
I
it,
think we met like
but
last
it
year,
wouldn't,
like.
there would be no negative connotation with it because you didn't meet the
So it's
criteria,
gonna call
right?
up
Yeah.
and be like, hey,
Right.
how come you have these
Sounds
No,
like.
no, no, no.
initiated decisions?
Not as of now. I mean, in the future, maybe there'll be some capability added where that's tracked or something, but as of right now, no. And what I'm telling people, like, that's a similar, Winnemucca happens all the time. They start a decision and they catch it on night 2. If you've got everything in there, go and just publish it. You know, I mean, there's nothing wrong with publishing a decision for a type 4 fire. It shows that you had all of your ducks in a row and were ready for it to go extended. Just in the decision rationale, we just say we published the decision, it was contained at 28 hours, 48 hours. But we still have the decision and that's why we published it. So, yeah.
No, there's just a lot of good tools in here, you know what I mean? And
Oh, yeah.
it's an easy way to like do some planning or look
Yeah.
at some stuff where I can like. look
Make
and see,
maps.
Hey, this is where
Yeah.
the safe gas layer is, this,
Right.
I can send a map out of this.
We
And
cut.
Right.
I don't actually wanna do a decision on it, but, cause I don't wanna, you know, bug my rain, you know, all the other people in the.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even as a type
I would
2
like to
IC, with this, I mean, this is the easiest way for me to make an incident map I can think of, right? I mean, as long as they got the perimeter and feature service, I can make PDF maps for everybody on the fire, just have WFDS. So,
I think trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Like where.
yeah, you can, yeah, the maps that you get out, you can, if you do a PDF, they're geo-reference PDFs.
So if we start rolling in
Yeah.
a fuel program.
Yeah, that's-
We'll get that figured
Yeah,
out.
pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Especially when you, I mean, it reads all the feature service, so if you got all your division breaks and everything,
Right,
yeah.
and then I can,
Check out
you
a
know,
couple spots.
throw in the.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, here's the safe guys, or whatever, here's the power lines, I can throw those layers in there pretty quick and just leave my GIS.
Is my favorite place in the world.
That is pretty
Go there
cool.
all the time. So I'm excited to be able to go to the park. So.
You have lots of excuses now, but hopefully not lots and lots, but maybe just a good number.
You know, just come out and see what's going on. So, yeah.
Awesome.
So I'll,
One,
I can text.
Remember which phone numbers that I have in my contacts here, so.